Elizabeth lay on her bed, scrolling through her social media feed. She could have been doing something useful, but she was very tired after work. Elizabeth worked as a receptionist in a hotel, spending 12 hours on her feet and constantly dealing with several tasks at the same time. In addition, this job required a lot of socializing with people, and the clients were very different. It was exhausting. I only had enough strength to get home, order food, and fall on the bed. Matthew would be home soon. That's when she'd get up. In the meantime, she could stay on the phone a little longer. Matthew was an unpretentious husband in terms of her household chores. He had never reproached Elizabeth for not cooking dinner or not cleaning the flat. There was a calmness and understanding between the couple. If Matthew was hungry, he either cooked or ordered food. In general, Elizabeth was very lucky to have him, conflict-free and gentle, a faithful homebody. Who would have thought then, when they met, that he would make such a marvelous husband? After all, in his youth, Matthew was a real bully, smoked behind the garages at school, bullied guys, always got into fights and boorish teachers. But he could joke so well that the whole company was laughing. That's what got Elizabeth's attention. Elizabeth considered her school years to be the happiest time of her life. Her parents were still alive. The girl did only what she wanted to do. There were many opportunities and suitors around. A wonderful carefree time. Not like now, when you have to spend most of your life at work. I don't know what it's all for. To earn money, cover household expenses, buy some clothes, delicious food, and earn again. Life flew by so quickly and seemed so meaningless. The woman had a classmate reunion coming up soon. After 10 years, Elizabeth decided to find out how everyone had turned out. Everyone was now 28 years old. Some had married, some had divorced, some had children, some had cars and flats. It was all terribly interesting. Elizabeth hadn't really made friends at school that would carry her relationships through the years, but she socialized with everyone evenly. Their class was surprisingly friendly. They went for walks and to museums together, celebrated holidays together. Elizabeth remembered names and surnames and found their pages. It was easier with men. They don't change their surnames, but former classmates were harder to find. Elizabeth read the posts, looked at the pictures, wondered, and moved on to the next student in her class. How everyone had changed in appearance. I wonder if they would say the same about her. What would she be like in their eyes? What could she tell them anyway? That her studies had gone wrong, dropped out of second-year medical school, went to work in a hotel. She's been working there for 8 years. Well, the pay is good. She rose up the career ladder to the senior shift. She's made friends with the staff. The girls are sure to ask about her husband and children. Elizabeth has never been married. She lives in a civil partnership with Matthew. I wonder if there'll be a class reunion in Matthew's class. I mean, he was in the same class. They had an affair at graduation, but it hasn't really taken off yet. What's that supposed to mean? They've been together for 10 years too. Wow. Elizabeth's mood immediately soured. Someone dates for 6 months and then goes to the registry office, and she hasn't been proposed to in 10 years. Whether it's her or him doesn't change the point. Elizabeth lives in a common law marriage and still doesn't have kids. That's what the girls will be discussing after the meeting. The woman felt uncomfortable, and when she came home, was quite satisfied with her life. Now she felt like an absolute failure. Sad thoughts about the meaning of her life again seized Elizabeth. But as a child, she had shown great promise. Her studies had been easy. She won Olympiads and competitions, especially in biology. Her parents were sure that their daughter would grow up to become a great doctor, perhaps even invent a cure for incurable diseases. Elizabeth also believed in her exceptional destiny, different from the usual boring life. This is probably what all teenagers believe until they face adult reality. And reality showed that Elizabeth was not so talented. She barely got into college. The scores were exactly the minimum to pass. The girl looked mediocre against her classmates, and she quickly realized that she was not interested in medicine because she was squeamish about other people's bodies and the sick. She studied only to avoid upsetting her parents. When her parents died in a car accident, the first thing Elizabeth did was to abandon her studies to distract herself from the painful experience. She took a 24-hour job at a hotel. Lots of people around, lots of tasks. All this helped her not to think about her life. Matthew took care of the house during this period, even though he was studying economics and combined his studies with a job in a bank. He tried to support his wife. After work, Elizabeth would lie down by the TV, and they would watch films together. They fell asleep on the sofa. In principle, she was happy with her life. She never thought about the fact that she could have had more and better things. Why did she have to go on that social networking site? She'd rather watch something nice on TV. Elizabeth switched off her phone. Then she suddenly remembered that she hadn't found Mary Smith, the only person she'd seen a few times since high school. She knew she was married, had twins, and worked in New York. But what if something had changed with her? She'd have to update her information. Elizabeth switched her phone back on and found her friend's page. The first post was a bouquet of flowers and the caption, "It's always beautiful at work." The second post was pictures of children in the woods by the lake and the caption, "My kittens." But when Elizabeth saw the third post, she thought she was losing her mind. The photo was captioned with the phrase, "Getting ready for the wedding by putting together bespoke wedding bouquets, friends get a discount," and the image showed a happy bride and groom. Except that the groom was her own husband, albeit her common-law husband. Elizabeth enlarged the photo, reduced it, but it did not change the fact that there was her Matthew, hugging some girl, and her face was suspiciously familiar. What was this all about? Was this a prank? Did Mary know that Elizabeth was living with Matthew? She couldn't remember if she had told her exactly who her common-law husband was. She might not have known, which was why she hadn't told her. But did Matthew himself have no idea that he would be so foolishly caught? Or was he not really hiding? Wasn't he afraid Elizabeth would find out? Why not just break up? Why live with one and prepare to marry the other? What kind of amazing meanness is that? Elizabeth found Mary's number on her phone and dialed her. "Mary, hi. It's Elizabeth, your classmate. Are you busy?" "Oh, hi, how unexpected. No, I was just picking up a bouquet. No other clients yet. Why are you calling?" "I saw a picture of the bride and groom on your page where you offer your services in arranging wedding bouquets. They look familiar. So I thought I'd see who it was." "Oh, that's Matthew from my class. I don't know if you remember him. He's getting married. And guess what? He came into my shop with his fiancée. What a coincidence. I took the order. I'll prepare the bouquet. He didn't even recognize me. Of course, I was gray and glasses at school. Now I weigh 70 kilos, I wear bright lenses and dress brightly too." "Yes, I guess he didn't recognize you," Elizabeth said thoughtfully. "Do you know the bride?" "No, she's not from our school, that's for sure. They work together, I think. That's what I got from the conversation. But she's a beauty. Don't you agree? You can see she's all well-groomed and spends a lot of money on it. Matthew's just a simple, ordinary-looking bloke." "Oh, I see. When's the wedding?" "It's not for another month. They're going on holiday. I also said to put more white flowers in the bouquet because they contrast with the tan skin." "On holiday? Oh, I see. Thank you." "Elizabeth, what's wrong with your voice? Something wrong?" "No, I'm just sad. My husband hasn't been able to take me on holiday for years. He says there's no money." "Oh, don't be sad. Not everyone has such money bags. Oh, I'll run the clients here." Elizabeth burst into tears at that last sentence. That's the thing, it was Matthew she'd fallen for. She had been with him for 10 years. but he was taking her on holiday and marrying someone else. Her heart was breaking with resentment. Elizabeth realized she just couldn't see her husband now. It is necessary to leave the house before he comes. The woman quickly packed up and went wandering through the evening streets. The lights were already on in the houses, families gathering together after a day's work. How was it that Elizabeth had wasted her youth on the wrong man? The thoughts choked the woman. She could have had a real family, raised children. Instead, she found herself cheated and betrayed on the cusp of 30 years. The flat they live in, bought together, but registered to Matthew, as is their car. Elizabeth is left without everything. After all, legally she's not even a wife. She has to start from scratch again. And then how can she believe in love again? She has to sort things out with Matthew first, dump on him that she knows everything, pack her things and leave. But she's not ready. She hasn't even got anything saved up or set aside for such an eventuality. And she's the one who loses. Elizabeth gets the housing problems, the heartbreak, the deceit. And Matthew will go on holiday with his new girlfriend and then get married. Where's the justice in that? No, she's not going to let them enjoy life when she's feeling so bad. We have to figure out a way to ruin their lives. First of all, find out the whole truth, all the details, and then devise a plan. When Elizabeth got home, Matthew was already there, frying something in the kitchen for dinner, acting completely normal. Naturally, there was no way to guess that he might have a mistress. He always came home from work on time, did not hide his phone, but immediately put it on the table. After dinner, he usually sat down to play a console or read fiction books. His demeanor was that of an ordinary homebody. Elizabeth went into the kitchen, sat down at the table, and scrutinized her husband, trying to understand how it was possible that he had another fiancée. "Matthew, do you love me?" she asked, not taking her eyes off her husband. "Of course I do, sweetheart. What's the sweet question all of a sudden?" "I was just wondering why you never married me." "I didn't know it was important to you." Matthew hesitated at the cooker. "It never even crossed my mind. In 10 years, it never occurred to you to propose to me." "What are you doing? Picking a fight? We have a good life. Why do we have to be so formal? What's wrong with you?" "See, everything is fine," Elizabeth sneered and stopped talking. "Okay, honey, I'm going to take a shower and then we'll have dinner." "I got all sweaty while I was cooking," Matthew said as he set the food down and poured the coffee. He left the kitchen and left his phone on the table. Elizabeth never took her husband's mobile phone. It was the way she'd been brought up. You can't touch someone else's. She told Matthew that when he'd grabbed her purse one day to find her headache pills, but now the woman was ready to break her principle. The phone didn't even have a password, so sure was Matthew of the inviolability of his mobile phone. Elizabeth opened the messenger, and the first thing she saw was a correspondence with Emily, private conversations, emoticons, hearts, kisses, and declarations of love. The story of her husband's relationship with another woman loomed in front of a stunned Elizabeth. Suddenly, the water in the bathroom turned off. Elizabeth quickly downloaded her rival's number and returned the phone to its place. She herself walked out of the kitchen and lay on the bed, turning her back to the wall. Let her husband think she had fallen asleep. Matthew peeked in the bedroom for fresh laundry, was surprised to see Elizabeth asleep, and went to dinner. Alone? The woman in the meantime downloaded a special application. You enter a phone number, and you get all the pages in the social networks of this person. In 5 minutes, Elizabeth knew everything about Emily, what she looked like, what kind of music she listened to, who were her friends, and who did she work for. She turned out to be a colleague of Matthew's, an employee of the same bank. Outwardly quite pretty, but with silicone-powdered lips and cheekbones tightened by a beautician. A doll. Elizabeth thought squeamishly of her rival. Did Amy know Matthew was living with someone else? Surely she must know. Colleagues would have told her. Elizabeth had gone to a corporate party with Matthew once, but it had been terribly boring. She drank a lot. She went outside to get some air and left without waiting for her husband. She never went with him again, but at least the staff knew Matthew was married. Where did she come from? How long had they been having an affair? Why wouldn't Matthew break up with me? Amy had a picture on her page on her hand, close up, a beautiful engagement ring. Everyone is congratulating her in the comments, and she replies that she's going dress shopping at Ocean next week. The groom will be shopping. Elizabeth almost drops the phone. The Ocean. That's the most expensive wedding dress boutique in their town. Where did he get the money from, she thought. But why does she only hear from him rejections and the phrase, no money? She wanted to go to Turkey, no money. She wanted to buy a designer dress for the New Year's corporate party, no money either. Even when she raised the issue of buying a flat, Matthew said that there was no money yet. And when Elizabeth hustled and found money for a down payment for a mortgage, which was made out to Matthew, and apparently he didn't have the money just for her, but he had it for the other one. What an arsehole and a bastard he was. All the situations when Elizabeth had tried to bring their family to the next level came to mind. For example, there was the story of the flat. They had been living in rented accommodation for several years with all the attendant inconveniences. A landlord who sets his own rules. It's impossible to make repairs to their liking to have a dog or cat. There is also the constant fear of being told to move out at any moment. Elizabeth several times started a conversation with Matthew about her housing, but he was categorically against the mortgage. And then the woman had to solve everything herself to find the money for the down payment, and then put pressure on her husband to draw up the documents. And as a result, they lived beautifully in their own spacious flat. She had done so much for their family. She'd given Matthew all her time, her youth, her love over the years. If she could know the future, she would never live with that low man. How hurt by the betrayal and how bitterly disappointed Elizabeth was now. For days she pretended everything was normal while she gathered information. Amy posted a photo from a wedding boutique with the caption, "What kind of dress I chose, see in a month." Matthew was next to her in the photo. Elizabeth was shaking from the fact that they weren't even hiding. She wanted to get the couple out in the open, but she had to find out if Amy knew that Matthew wasn't single. To do that, the woman went to the bank office. Emily was sitting at the customer service table. Elizabeth knew her immediately. She had studied her paragraphs too thoroughly. In person, she looked even more like a silicone doll. "Hi, I'm Emily. How can I help you?" "I'm looking for your employee, Matthew Piet." "Is something wrong? If you have any questions about his work, can we refer you to the quality department?" "No, there's nothing wrong. It's just that he's my husband." Elizabeth watched Emily's reaction carefully. Her eyebrows rose slightly in surprise, but there was a sarcastic smile on her lips that told Elizabeth everything. She knew Matthew was married. "Just a moment. Please wait, I'll invite him in," Emily said. As Emily dialed the employee's number, Elizabeth caught the mocking looks of the female employees. Obviously, she'd given them a good topic for gossip. It was clear. The whole office knew about this love triangle. Everyone except the wife herself. How vulgar and low. Elizabeth turned and walked outside, unable to stand the leering stares. Matthew came out to her an hour later and said in a calm tone, "Oh, what a surprise. Are you here? What brings you here? How fortunate. Let's go to lunch together then." Elizabeth walked beside her husband and was amazed. They were two different people. When will he tell her? I wondered. The day before the wedding. Or will he marry and continue to live with her? Or would she just see her things on the doorstep one day and Emily running her house? She shook with indignation. Elizabeth hid her emotions well, for not a single muscle in her face flinched. Matthew didn't even sense that anything was wrong. They walked into the cafe and took a table by the window. When they had both ordered, Elizabeth struck up a conversation. "Matthew, I'm going on holiday in a month. Why don't we take a holiday after all? Go away together? Then no, I don't think so. Why not? Aren't you supposed to be on holiday? That's right, but it was canceled. Instead of a holiday, I'm going on a business trip to another city. They're opening new offices there. I have to train the new recruits, get them up to speed. And I have a lot of experience, so they're sending me on a business trip instead of a holiday. And you didn't resent it, Matthew. What can you do, Elizabeth? Work is work. Let's just drop it. You'll give up the business trip and we'll go on holiday, like I've always dreamed of, to some hot country. Spend the weeks together, saying stow either. Please, Matthew, let's do it. No, Elizabeth, we can't. I've already agreed. There's no one else to send, and the ticket's in my name. And you know how expensive it is to fly to another country. Where are we going to get the money for them? I'm very limited, otherwise I'd have taken you a long time ago. By the way, can you pay for our lunch? I left some money at work. Trini has no conscience at all, as Elizabeth thought, but she said nothing more. She quickly packed up her lunch and went home. Apparently it was time to pack her things, but first she wanted to devise a plan of revenge. Obviously, you can't make nice by force, and Elizabeth had no illusions about winning back Matthew's love. But she would not let it go. If only they'd treat her humanly, confess, explain, apologize finally. But to lie to the last one like this right in the eye, that deserved to be treated accordingly. Elizabeth remembered how scornful and mocking Emily had looked at her. That wretch had stolen someone else's husband and was happy. Elizabeth's plan was simple. She would walk briskly up to her and pull out her braids. For the woman had heard how expensive and time-consuming hair extensions were, and how easily they could be ripped out. The bruises take a long time to heal too, and if one taps the top point of the bridge of her nose, the circles around her eyes will darken. Let her be battered and battered in her holiday photos, just as she deserved to be. Elizabeth couldn't accept that Matthew's mistress was so much prettier than she was. It was as if the infidelity was hurting the woman's self-esteem even more. She hated Matthew, but she also depended on him. After all, she needed to peacefully retrieve her things. And if she could, demand from him the money she paid for the down payment back then. So harming him and taking revenge was impossible right now. But Elizabeth could repay the vile rival, who not only danced on another's grief, but also laughed at the wife who had been deceived for so long. For this there is no forgiveness or excuse. One should remain a human being in any situation. Certainly the travesties in the direction of the mistress will not help to survive the pain and betrayal. But Elizabeth, at least for a little bit, will feel that she was able to stand up for herself and will stop being such a wimp, which wiped their feet. And the only thing left to figure out is how to stalk Emily without anyone interfering and stopping Elizabeth. But calling her for meetings isn't going to work. It's hard to come up with a plausible excuse, and she'll quickly realize that Elizabeth is now aware of their affair. They're always busy at work. But what if we could do something to keep people away for a while? Like fake a fire, create smoke. Alarms would go off, and then evacuate. Okay, stop. But then how do we make sure she stays in the building? So wait for her to go to the bathroom and lock her in there. Bingo. Everyone will be gone. Elizabeth figures out her relationship with the snake. Then she'll leave and forget about her and Matthew like a bad dream. So the woman went ahead with her plan and went to the builder's shop first. Good afternoon. I need strong magnetic blocks. The thing is that my dacha door is locked on a metal latch, but it is always open from the wind. I want to lock it from the backside, Elizabeth said. Yes, of course. Anything else you'd like? A smoke bomb. What? The salesman asked in surprise. The moles are bothering me. Elizabeth smiled. Would a smoke bomb help to get them out? Oh yes, and the strongest scotch tape, please. Why Elizabeth had bought scotch tape she didn't know. She had fantasies of being bound and gagged. The woman felt like a heroine of the adventure series she loved to watch so much. In them, good always defeated evil, and the victim triumphed over the oppressors in the finale. That's what Elizabeth wanted, a just retribution. Besides the feeling of vengeance, she also wanted to see the remorse on the faces of the traitors. Elizabeth left the shop with a satisfied smile and the purchases that would bring her plan to fruition. The woman had been waiting for over a week. She wanted to get everything done on the last day before her holiday so this girl wouldn't have time to get her new hair done in time for her trip. Studying Emily's page these days, Elizabeth had even learned that the bride and groom were going to Miami for a fortnight. She thought for a moment that this was all being done to spite her. After all, Matthew was fulfilling for the other everything Elizabeth had dreamed of: the wedding, the dress, the holiday in a hot country. Why didn't they choose something else for the holiday? Apparently her husband wanted to hurt her more. And then these days, Matthew suddenly made her a strange proposal. Elizabeth had been thinking of renovating her flat. I've already found a contractor and arranged to start the day after tomorrow. I'll be away on business and I'll get you a place to stay. Wait, Matthew, are you trying to move me out? No, I'm just trying to make our home more cozy. You wouldn't like living in a renovation. There's dust and dirt and workers here all the time. And in a rented place you won't be disturbed. I've got some boxes. Let's get our things together. It became clear to Elizabeth that Matthew had decided to evict her without any arguments and conflicts, to go on holiday with his mistress, and then to change the locks and confront his ex-wife with the fact. She thought about confronting him right now, telling him to his face, but decided to be wiser. First she would deal with his mistress, and then she would come to the flat in their absence and arrange such a repair that it would cost him a lot of money in the real one. Aloud, however, she just nodded and started packing. She noticed that Matthew had started to put his things in cupboards and hers in boxes. Tears choked the woman, but she couldn't cry in front of him. In the evening, Matthew moved the packed boxes to the rented flat, put them all out of the car, and got ready to leave. "Where are you going? Are you leaving me here?" Elizabeth asked. "I thought it would be more convenient for you to get to work from home, where all your stuff is. If you need anything, it's all close at hand." "Are you kidding me now?" "Yeah, all my stuff is in boxes. Even if I needed something, it would take me a year to find it. We've always slept together." "Did you decide to be alone tonight?" Elizabeth asked. "Elizabeth, I can't stay here. I haven't got everything ready for my business trip, and I have to get the flat ready and hand it over to the repairman. Anyway, I'm off. You get settled in." "Kisses," Matthew replied. Elizabeth waited until the door slammed shut and burst into tears. She'd been crying so much the last few days that she didn't understand why she couldn't stop crying. Maybe she wasn't the perfect wife, but did she deserve to be thrown out like this without explanation or honest conversation? Or was Matthew afraid she'd make a scene and demand a division of property, so he decided to keep things quiet? Well, he miscalculated. There will be a scandal, and a big one. His lady will be out of her hair tomorrow, and Elizabeth's flat would be so trashed that no amount of renovation would help. With a familiar movement of her hand, Elizabeth went to the page and saw a picture of her own flat. Emily was lying on the couch Elizabeth had bought, smiling and holding a glass. At the top was the caption, "Happy housewarming to me." "You bastard," Elizabeth thought, and a flame of hatred ignited in her soul. The woman went to bed in the cold, uncomfortable bed of a strange flat. All her tears had already dried. She was in a hurry for the day of vengeance to come. She was never able to sleep. Until dawn, she replayed her revenge plan in her head. Then she remembered her life with Matthew, imagined how happy he was with someone else, tortured herself with these fantasies, and suffered. The bank was crowded this morning. Usually everyone planned to do business in the morning. That was what Elizabeth had hoped for, that she could get lost among the customers and keep an eye on Emily. Finally, the woman noticed Emily tapping her colleague on the shoulder. whispered something, and walked out from behind the counter. Elizabeth followed her rival. She was dressed stunningly today, which the cheating wife noted with hatred. On high heels and in a small black elegant dress, she attracted the eyes of all the men in the room. Finally, opening the magnetic door with the employee's card, Emily left the common area. Elizabeth inserted her finger at the last minute, preventing the door from slamming shut. Emily didn't notice that someone was following her. She stepped into the toilet cubicle and closed the lock. Elizabeth immediately installed a powerful magnetic blocker. Emily was trapped. The vigilante looked out into the corridor, threw a smoke bomb at its center, which was already working. A couple more minutes and the sirens would go off. The evacuation would begin, and so it did. Elizabeth heard a commotion in the main hall, and with it the sound of banging. Emily was pounding and yanking on the bathroom door, startled by the siren and not realizing what was happening. Elizabeth waited until the smoke from the checker had cleared and the voices in the service hall had subsided. But somehow the smoke didn't disappear. It seemed to even increase and fill the room. This can't be. The checker had burned through and shouldn't smoke anymore. Elizabeth walked over and opened the magnetic door, pushing the button, and immediately slammed it shut because flames erupted in her face. A real fire. Elizabeth started thrashing around the bathroom. The whole thing is that while the woman was holding back her rival, by a ridiculous accident, the paper in the wastebasket caught fire. She was standing next to a computer block which overheated. So the paper caught fire, but nobody noticed it because the smoke bomb caused a siren and fuss, and the real fire was not stopped and extinguished in time. One glass of water would have been enough to prevent the tragedy that was about to happen, but there was no one to pour that glass then, and everyone evacuated at the alarm. Elizabeth ran into the bathroom and removed the locking mechanism from the door, which was shaken by the impact. Emily flew outside and fearfully started looking around. She saw Elizabeth and screamed. "What's going on?" "We're on fire," Elizabeth replied. "I'll tell you now, bitch, what's going on." Elizabeth remembered why she was even here. Elizabeth clutched at Emily's hair. "Let go, you crazy woman. Are you out of your mind?" Emily screamed and started fighting back with her arms and legs. "I'm not, but you're about to be fine. You took someone else's husband, flat, holiday, wedding, and life. I'm going to do more than just pull your hair out." With these words, Emily tried to throw Elizabeth to the floor, but she dodged, pushed her in the chest, ran to the exit, opened the door, but immediately coughed from the smoke in her face and closed the door again. "But there's a fire out there. We have to get out or we're going to die," Emily said. "Die, you bitch," Elizabeth screamed, letting out all the pain and rage she had built up. "Why do you hate me so much? It's Matthew's decision. He chose the woman he chose. If he loved you, would he have gone out with me? You could have been honest with me, but you're a treacherous bitch. You looked me in the eye and laughed. At me, thinking I didn't know anything. Matthew should have told you everything. I don't owe you anything. You're nothing to me. I'll show you nothing." And Elizabeth lunged at Emily again, and they rolled on the floor, hitting each other with a la. Both began to gasp for air as the air in the lavatory became more and more scarce. Finally, their tangle disintegrated. Emily jumped up, ripped off her dress, and started plugging the gaps in the door. Elizabeth's strength was only enough to stare at Emily and be angry at the sight of her beautiful figure without her dress. That beauty became even more obvious. "Why are you lying there? Do you want to die right here?" Elizabeth shouted, trying to open the bathroom window. "Help me." Elizabeth slowly stood up and walked to the window. If they don't make themselves known now, their salvation is nil. No one knows about the women locked in the toilet. All the other visitors evacuated before the real fire started. The window in the loo was never opened. It was ventilated by special systems. There was no need for air from the street, so it was very difficult to board up the window. The two women piled on as hard as they could. The window opened so suddenly that Elizabeth would have fallen out if Emily hadn't grabbed her. But as soon as Elizabeth regained her balance, she pulled her arm out and pushed her rival away. Both women started screaming out the window and calling for help. But the people on the street didn't even look in that direction. The siren was drowning out all sound. "We need to get some attention," Emily said, and ran to the booths. She came back carrying rolls of toilet paper. Elizabeth quickly realized the idea and began to help throw the rolls down. One of the passers-by almost came under this fire. He looked up and saw two screaming women. He immediately ran up to the crowd and pointed them to this window. The fire service was still on its way, so the women just had to be patient and wait. "I'm sorry," Emily said, crying, "I don't want to die with guilt. I didn't like Matthew being married, but he said, 'Don't think about it. It's not your problem. Our marriage died a long time ago.'" "Yeah, except you forgot to support me." "Elizabeth, didn't you realize it was over between you two a long time ago?" "Why should I? We lived together and hardly ever quarreled. Everything was fine until you came along." Emily looked at Elizabeth in surprise. "Do you think it's normal for a wife to cheat on her husband? You think it's called we were fine?" Elizabeth felt a twinge. That truth made her remember that night, the corporate party with Matthew. She'd been incredibly bored. Everyone was talking about their professional topics, discussing fines and incentives. It was all about work and work and work. All they could do was enjoy the free drinks and snacks and dream about when they could go home. The heeled sandals rubbed terribly, and the gold dress was so tight that it was uncomfortable to move. So Elizabeth mostly sat as her husband's trophy, because he would periodically bring one or another colleague to introduce himself to her. You could see in Matthew's face how much he admired his wife's beauty, how pleased he was that others were noticing that beauty as well. "Matthew, why don't we go home?" Elizabeth asked. "Yes, darling. We can be on our way in 15 minutes. Our boss is about to make a toast, and we can leave discreetly afterwards," Matthew replied. "Aren't you thirsty enough? You can hardly walk." "I can hardly walk because these sandals are chafing." "But they're so pretty they look just like you," Matthew smiled. "All right, listen to your boss. I'm going to get some fresh air." Elizabeth stood up and staggered slightly, walking towards the exit. Instead of the lift, she took the stairs. The drink and uncomfortable shoes caused Elizabeth to stumble at one point, and probably would have fallen had she not been supported by a man walking towards her. Elizabeth mumbled a thank you. She looked up at the man whose hands were still holding her waist. Suddenly, out of the blue, she kissed him. The man returned the kiss, gripped her waist even tighter, then began to run his hands under her dress, pulling it up. Elizabeth didn't resist but gave in to the sudden impulse and gave herself to the stranger right there on the stairs. When it was over, the man zipped up his fly, winked at her, and walked quietly upstairs, where the sounds of the party were still echoing. And Elizabeth, after adjusting her dress, went down to the street, got a taxi, and went home alone. She had never discussed the situation with anyone and didn't even know if her husband knew what had happened. Judging by the fact that Matthew had never asked about it, Elizabeth had decided to pretend to herself that it had never happened. She succeeded well, because she did not remember the situation even when she drank heavily again, but already at her corporate party in the hotel. The situation was almost identical, except that this time the betrayal took place in the hotel room, where she went up with a colleague also quickly, without unnecessary emotions and sentiments. Everything ended just as easily. She had forgotten about the situation again and would not have remembered it had it not been for Emily's accusations, which had stirred up a sludge in the pool of Elizabeth's memory. The woman faded her gaze. Then she looked at Emily and asked rudely, "How do you know?" Are you joking? Emily was surprised again. The whole office knew about it at the corporate party. The man you slept with was a terrible bully and a pain in the arse, but he was also a senior administrator. He came into the party and cheerfully talked about his lucky encounter on the stairs, not forgetting to mention how comfortable he was in his little gold dress. Everyone realized at once who he'd slept with. Only you weren't in the audience. You were the only one in gold that day. Matthew was scary to look at. It was like he died on the spot. He was so pale. No one even bothered to tease him. Matthew quickly left the office, and the next day, the gossip and banter started. To be honest, I was pretty sure he broke up with you that night. Did you really think no one knew? Yes, I thought so. Elizabeth said, dumbfounded. He said nothing to me that night or afterwards. Then he was either a masochist or he loved you too much. Because only a lazy man hasn't gone on about his wife's infidelity. Jokes about horns, cheating wives. Jokes about cheating had been going round the office for years, and they were always made in Matthew's presence. He didn't laugh, but he didn't stop it either, so no one could understand what was going on in his heart. Everyone was sure you were divorced, but it was inappropriate to ask directly. But then one day you showed up at the office. The day you took out the mortgage, remember? That's when they started calling Matthew not just cuckold, but worse. Yes, I remember that day. I'm surprised you followed Matthew's life so closely to remember all that. Yeah, because I felt sorry for him. And then I realized that I also really liked him. But Matthew didn't pay attention to any of the women in the office. For the time being, I guess Elizabeth quipped. Yes, after your mortgage, he was changed. That's when he finally noticed me. We started having lunch together and talking. At first we were friends and just chatted, and then it became more than that. I don't want to hear it. What? The truth hurts. You just admitted that you spent years preparing to seduce my husband and eventually win him over. So you're even more guilty than I thought. You're twisting my words. Yes, I liked him, but Matthew was faithful to you and loved you to the last straw of his patience. And you know what that last straw was. Guess what? What was it? That you pouted your lips and cheekbones and he couldn't resist. No, it was your theft and machinations. Elizabeth twitched again. How did she know everything? Had Matthew told her about everything? Then why hadn't she gone to the police? Had kept quiet about everything? It was never supposed to come out anywhere, ever. It all started when she started talking to Matthew about getting her own place. But her husband didn't even bother to look into it. He just shut the conversation down with the phrase, "No money." And Elizabeth realized that if she didn't take matters into her own hands, nothing would be solved. She looked up mortgage rates. She found out the nuances. And once again, she confronted her husband with a question. "Matthew, let's buy our own place." To which he replied, "Elizabeth, my salary is barely enough to cover our needs. You can't get a mortgage without a down payment. That's a lot of money." Well, let's use your position as a bank employee. Think about it and come up with something. Let them give you under special conditions. No, Lisa, I won't do it. Do you want me to get fired or worse, go to jail? No, I want my own place. I'm sick of living in rented flats. We can't afford it now. Maybe later, I don't know. Stop nagging me about this. I refuse to discuss it anymore. Elizabeth really didn't bring it up again. And Matthew was beginning to think she'd accepted their situation. He himself had been thinking about options for the future, but for now he could only save little by little for a later installment. But it turned out that Elizabeth wouldn't give up on any of her ideas. She'd latched onto this one like a pit bull, waiting for the right moment to make her move. And one day it came. Elise was on hotel duty alone at the time. Her partner was sick, and 2 of the maids had recently been laid off, so she was working for 4 of them, doing things that weren't even her own. She was standing behind the counter when she saw a prostitute coming out of the lift. There was no doubt that it was her, the provocative attire, the risky behavior. Besides, yesterday she had been led under the arm of a fat rich man who had taken up residence on their 7th floor. The red-haired girl, 6 feet tall with a big ass and ample breasts, didn't even look at the receptionist as woman. No big deal. Elizabeth had seen a lot of situations like this in her job. The man decided to relax and rented a girl for the night. Prostitutes always annoyed the woman, because for a couple of hours they had the amount that Elizabeth received for a 12-hour shift. So much for the great wisdom of spreading your legs. That's what she thought when she saw another butterfly of the night. The call girl left the lobby and Elizabeth decided to go upstairs and offer to clean the room for the adult entertainment lover. The lift took a very long time to come down. Elizabeth's irritation peaked. She screamed and walked to the 7th floor. There she took a breath, put on a duty smile, and walked up to the suite. The door was open. The rich man was sleeping so soundly that he didn't wake up from his own snoring, which made every fold of his flabby body shake in unison with his breathing. Elizabeth was about to leave, having hung up the Do Not Disturb sign, when her eyes caught sight of a table with a stack of notes on it. Elizabeth had never held so much money in her hands before. She slowly walked over and picked up one stack, weighing it in the palm of her hand. It felt good to hold such a sum. Elizabeth returned the money to its place with regret. Sighing, she headed for the exit. Suddenly something came over her. A haunting thought of her flat flashed through her mind. This money would definitely be enough for a down payment. Elizabeth quickly went to the table, grabbed everything, and left the room with the money. After stashing the notes in the back office, she began to think of all the ways they could get to her. The man would wake up soon, find it missing, and the first thing he'd do would be to go to the front desk. There are cameras all over the hotel, so he's bound to ask for video from their floor to find the thief. So I'll have to delete the video from the archive where I go in, and keep it only until the hooker leaves. From then on, I want an empty corridor until lunchtime. But who can help me with that? Elizabeth called Matthew and asked him to come over right away. Her husband didn't know what had happened, but he was very worried. It was the first time she had ever asked him to come to her work. Matthew flew even through a red light and whirled into the hotel lobby. Elizabeth was alive, healthy, even as if happy. Matthew slowed down, puzzled, and approached his wife more slowly. "What's wrong? You rang. I was really scared for you." "Shh, honey, all our problems are solved," Elizabeth said solemnly. "What? What problems? What do you mean?" "We can take out a mortgage now. I have $1 million for a down payment." Elizabeth was smiling. How was Matthew shocked? No ideas popped into his head. Where could she get that much money? "I'll tell you all about it now, but I need your little help." Elizabeth then told him everything, quickly recounting the events of an hour ago. The more Matthew listened, the more shocked he looked. Finally, he said, "And what do you want me to do?" "For you to help edit the footage from the cameras. You used to be into video editing, so you'll figure it out. Don't worry," Elizabeth said lightly. "You think I'm worried about that?" "Yes, I have 100 reasons to worry. From the fact that my wife is a thief to the fact that she and now me, as an accomplice, could go to jail. What were you thinking about?" "About us. About our house. Stop pretending to be so white and fluffy. At least I'm doing something for us, not just saying there's no money. You're the one who pushed me into stealing by your inability to make money, to provide for your family, so you can't just leave me to deal with this situation on my own. I'm not a part of this. Elizabeth, I'm going to work. Go get every penny back before your client wakes up. I'm out of here." Elizabeth couldn't believe that her husband had been so mean to drive off and leave her with this problem. Return the money. How could she not? It was her money, she deserved it. How was she any worse than anyone else for not being able to have a simple house of her own? Elizabeth decided to sort it all out herself. She called their former system administrator. It's a good thing he still had a contact. Ben, hi. It's Elizabeth, the administrator, remember? I really need your help. Yeah, I remember. But I don't work here anymore, so I can't help you. Ben, wait. It's just that you brought in a guy who doesn't know anything, doesn't understand anything. It's an emergency. Remember Anne the maid? She slept with a customer in the corridor outside her room. Now the client's wife shows up and demands the security footage. Says her husband cheated on her while she was out jogging. And she wants proof. And I want to keep this case quiet. Is there any way to delete a specific period of time from the video history? Oh, what floor camera is she asking for video from? From the 7th floor and the lift. I don't know if I'm going to disappoint you or delight you. We don't have a camera on the 7th floor. It's a prop. When I installed the cameras in the hotel, I ordered 9 of them, but 2 of them didn't work. I had to make a temporary solution. I put only the camera housings on the 7th and 8th floors and installed the working ones. But then this layoff happened, and I completely forgot to pass on the information about the cameras. My mistake, and everything in the lift is working fine. Oh, good. Thanks, Ben. We'll be sure to replace the cameras, Elizabeth said. She hung up the phone and could hardly contain her joy. She wouldn't even have to do anything. How fortunate it was that there was no lift and she had walked. Now the lift cameras captured only a woman of easy behavior walking away from a customer. Don't all these lucky coincidences for Elizabeth mean that she is being taken care of from above? That it is fate's will that the money falls into her hands? Silly Matthew, he'll thank me for it. He pretends to be honorable. He'll be a loser without me, she thought. Elizabeth worked her shift and was at Matthew's bank by 4. His colleagues called him in, telling him with a chuckle that his wife had come to see him. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I brought the down payment for our mortgage," smiling wryly, the wife replied. "No, I'm against all that." "Matthew, calm down. It's all sorted out. No one will find out. Let's not make a scene. Come on, we need your signatures. I've already started the paperwork and the deposit. Come on." Matthew obeyed his wife again, but this time he felt something new. It was a heavy feeling. Sometimes people do things that are incompatible with love. For someone, such a deed becomes treason. For someone, physical violence. For someone, verbal humiliation. But after such an act, a person realizes that he does not love anymore. Treason did not become for Matthew this point of unlove. He felt terribly bad, but he still realized that he was not ready to give up Elizabeth. This theft, on the other hand, had become. Matthew signed the documents automatically because all his attention was directed inside himself. And there the man no longer found love for his wife, but found the joy of release. Elizabeth was called into work at 6. She'd just finished the mortgage. There was a scandal at the hotel. A VIP client's money had been stolen. But the worst part was that the cameras on the floor didn't work. Everyone was being interviewed. Elizabeth as receptionist first and foremost. The woman, blinking her big honest eyes, told how in the morning she had seen a girl of easy behavior running away and looking back. There had been no other visitors since morning. Everything agreed that the woman was the thief. The rich client stood at the reception desk and listened to all the evidence. Finally, he interrupted. "Okay, I get it. I hope this stays between us and doesn't go public. There's no need for the police. It'll ruin your reputation and mine. I'll find this girl myself and deal with her quietly. This isn't the 90s, but I won't be fooled. You keep your mouth shut, then it's my business. Your hotel will be no problem." Do we have a deal? Everyone here nodded, and the matter was really forgotten. Elizabeth also worked as a receptionist, but she had ordered that the cameras on the 7th and 8th floors be replaced. She and Matthew had bought the flat with a mortgage. The payment was small, so it would be paid off quickly. On the day of the deal, Elizabeth was in a hurry. She had to get her things into her new place and run to her shift. Matthew gave her a lift to the hotel. Only when she took a seat at the counter could she catch her breath. "You look exhausted," her partner remarked. "Yeah, I've been on my feet all day. Bought our own flat today. Can you believe it? We just had time to move our stuff in. I'm so excited to finally have a place of my own. How are you doing?" "I'm fine. I just had a fight with my husband this morning. We've been ignoring each other all day. By the way, did you hear the terrible news?" "No, what is it?" "A girl was found dead in a manhole near the hotel. When I saw the picture, I was shocked. I know her. She gets a lot of calls from our clients. The redhead Jenny, remember? She's got a very distinctive look about her." I remember. Elizabeth dismissed her. So what? I feel sorry for her and I'm scared. Maybe it's a maniac in our neighborhood. How can I walk alone now? Make up with your husband and don't go out alone. Elizabeth laughed and went back to work. But the news didn't leave her mind. Elizabeth suddenly wondered if it was the same prostitute who had been accused of stealing the other day. But the woman dismissed the thought, so as not to think about it further. You could start blaming yourself. And Elizabeth didn't like that. She believed that guilt destroyed a person, so it was better to avoid it. "How do you know about the theft?" asked an exasperated Elizabeth to Emily. "Did Matthew tell you?" "Surely it may not occur to you that he feels very badly about it. Thinks he's complicit because he took out a mortgage using stolen money." "Exactly. If it wasn't for me, he wouldn't have taken it. And now you're like rats. You've slowly outlived me so you can live in my house. And I risked so much to get it. We're not going to live there." "What do you mean? What about your post?" "I wrote about the housewarming to tease you. I knew you were following my page." "So Matthew does have a conscience. He's going to give it back to me. What was the whole renovation and eviction game for?" "Matthew already paid off the mortgage on that flat." "What? Is he out of his mind? What do you mean he gave it back?" "Elizabeth, are you out of your mind? Do you think we want to live in fear of your theft being discovered? They'll ask for your bail back, and they'll put Matthew in jail. I told you straight away we weren't going to live there after the wedding. I also offered to pay the police back the whole deposit and let them handle it, but Matthew refused. He still feels sorry for you. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You wouldn't let me live there and you wouldn't let me. What kind of a dog in the hay is that?" "You'll never understand, I guess," Emily sighed. They huddled even closer to the edge of the window, the toilet already filled with smoke. The wet rag under the door wasn't saving them. The door itself became hot, and that's when the women got really scared. Help might not get to them in time. It was a good distraction from the nightmare that was happening. But when all the words were gone, all that remained was the fear of burning alive. "We should go out on the ledge," Emily said firmly. "It's our only chance to stall for time." "Are you crazy? No way. I still want to live." "If you want to live, then listen to me. The fire's coming. We have to get out of here before we pass out from the fumes." "But we're going down," Elizabeth panicked. "So they'll hold on to each other. Come on, let's go." Emily took off her shoes and boldly threw her foot over the windowsill. "Barefoot will have a better grip on the metal ledge," she said, and stood on the ledge at the back of the window, slowly straightening her legs and rising. "Come on, come here." "Why are you rushing me?" Don't you care? It's even better for you if I'm burned. No one to bother you. No, I care. Come on, Elizabeth. Emily held out her hand and helped Elizabeth out the window. So they both stood there, pressed against the window. As the fire filled the last room, the rescuers had already stretched out a ladder and attached it to the building. It was one flight away from the women, and the rescuers were in a great hurry. Elizabeth was very nervous and didn't notice herself making a wrong move. Her foot slipped, and the woman would have fallen off. But Emily held her hand tightly with her last strength, preventing her from falling. At the risk of their own fall, the rescuers picked up the dangling Elizabeth, picked up Emily, and lowered them down where an ambulance was already waiting. They were both taken to the same hospital and even placed in a shared room to put in IVs and give medication for smoke poisoning. The nurse put Elizabeth's IV in first, then walked over to Emily's bed. Allergies, contraindications, individual intolerance. Emily, are you on any medication? No, I'm pregnant, Emily said quietly. But Elizabeth heard it anyway, got up on the bed and angrily hissed. You bitch. Okay, calm down. The nurse stopped the argument with a commanding voice. I'll send the doctor right away. Tell him about the pregnancy. You need to be checked to see if any of this has harmed the baby. This drip is definitely not going to hurt the baby. All right, lie back. So my husband knocked you up too, Elizabeth hissed as the nurse left. Actually, he'll be my husband soon, in case you've forgotten, Emily retorted coldly. She was tired of this annoying woman with no conscience or even gratitude. If it weren't for her, she'd be scraped off the pavement right now, and certainly not brought to this room. Suddenly, the door opened quietly, and Matthew entered. The first thing he did was run over to Emily's bed. How are you, sweetheart? Are you okay? How's our baby? Is he in any danger? Don't you want to ask about me, you prick? Elizabeth interrupted him. But her ex-husband paid no attention to her until he listened to Emily. Then he kissed his bride tenderly and turned to his common-law wife. Elizabeth, I think you figured it out by now. I love another woman, and I'm leaving you. It's hard not to. You lied to my face and had an affair behind my back, she parried. What? You don't want to feel that on your own skin. Do you think I enjoyed having you cheat on me? Matthew, it was one time, I swear. I'm so sorry. I thought you didn't know. Elizabeth. That's enough, he interrupted her. My whole office knew, and I'm aware it was more than once. But it doesn't matter anymore. It's over between us. Why didn't you tell me right away? Why did you have to wait till the last minute? Because it's a boomerang. Elizabeth, do you think my picture with her just happened to catch your eye? No. I wanted you to recognize it that way. I wanted you to see that the whole world knew of your humiliation. I thought you'd realize something about yourself and the way you treated me. But I didn't realize that you wouldn't. Why did you give away our flat? Is that to get back at me too? No, it's the most sensible thing to do. And I've already contacted the police. They'll be here soon to question you. Do you want to put me in jail? Elizabeth is trembling with fear. Matthew, please don't. This has nothing to do with me. I was trying for you and me. You've been trying the wrong way, Elizabeth. You can deal with your own actions. I don't even feel sorry for you anymore, because you plan to hurt the woman and child I love. But I loved you, Matthew, and I still do. When you love, you don't cheat. Matthew kissed Emily, whispered to her that he would be back soon, that he had some business to attend to, and left. The women in the room were silent. Emily had fallen asleep under the influence of the medication, relaxed for the first time since the stress she had endured. Elizabeth frantically tried to think of a way out of the situation. She could say that Matthew had pressured her into looking for money. She could deny it and say that she hadn't taken anything from work and that a friend had lent her the down payment. Many more schemes were running through her mind when there was a knock and an investigator entered the room. "Hello, I've been expecting you. Have you come to find out all about the negligence of the bank employees?" Elizabeth began in a quiet voice, trying not to wake Emily. "Good afternoon. Actually, I have a lot of questions for you, but we can start here. What do you mean?" "Someone put blocks on the toilet cubicle door." "When was this?" "That's why I couldn't get out in time. I broke the door down and I saw this madam. Maybe she's the one who set the whole thing up." "Why would she do that, do you think?" "She's sleeping with my husband." "That's what everyone in the office will tell you. Everyone knows. She probably wanted to get rid of me that way. Check the cause of the fire, because she could have said it too." The investigator looked at Elizabeth sternly, writing down her statement in his notebook. "This is a serious accusation. Do you understand?" "Yes." "I'm telling you the truth. She's very cunning. I'm sure when she wakes up she'll twist and lie to you. But I can tell you everything in order." "Yes, please." "I went to see my husband at the bank that day. I needed to talk to him about getting our flat back because he got it dishonestly. But on the way I had to go to the toilet. I asked this employee to escort me. And then I couldn't get out. She was laughing through the door, insulting me. And then the fire started. When she and I were standing on the ledge, she kicked me in the leg and I almost fell down. So I'd like to file an attempted murder charge." I wrote it all down. "Tell me, what kind of flat fraud were you talking about?" "My husband got a mortgage by stealing the deposit money from the hotel where I work." "If you could elaborate." "I was on shift alone that day and I couldn't cope. I called my husband and asked him to come over to stand behind the counter as I had a bad stomach ache. He arrived, I ran off to the loo. When I came back, he was very happy and said something like, 'Now we have it for the mortgage.' I didn't understand a thing. But in the evening I was told that my client had been robbed. I think it was my husband's doing." "Can anyone confirm that your husband actually came to the hotel that day?" "The cameras can confirm that. We can get my phone records and his work will confirm that he took time off work. And when he came back the same day, he took out a mortgage. Where else would he have got the money?" "Why didn't you go to the police straight away?" "I was afraid I'd be punished as an accessory. I also loved my husband and didn't want to give him away." "What changed?" "My conscience got the better of me. I decided to persuade Matthew to sell the flat and give it all back. But he threatened me to keep quiet and stay out of it. So I rang him and told him I'd come to the bank and tell him at his work. And when I got there, you already know what happened." "I'm sorry. I had other information. I was on my way to arrest you. I didn't realize it was the exact opposite of what I was told. I need time to verify this information. I'll need you to rest for a while. I'll need you to verify the information. Tomorrow I'll give orders to keep your roommate in the hospital as soon as she regains consciousness, and I'll file a search for your husband. I hope it's not too late and he hasn't fled the country. Have a good day." The investigator left, and Emily opened her eyes and, trying to get used to the hospital lighting, saw that Elizabeth had disconnected the IV and was going somewhere quickly. "Elizabeth, where are you going? What's wrong? Who is here?" "I don't know. Some doctor. He said they're discharging me. You'll have to lie down for a while, so don't come up." "Are you running away?" "Don't be silly. They let me go home." "Wait. They couldn't let you go after everything you've done." Emily tried to stand up and restrain the woman. But Elizabeth stepped close to her, clenched her hand into a fist, and swung at her with a warning. "Another thing to keep in mind, bitch. I know you're pregnant now, so I know exactly where to hit you. You're going to shut up now and let me walk away, okay? Otherwise, I'm going to beat you so bad Don't know if your baby's gonna make it. Do you understand? Emily nodded her head in horror and stopped talking. Elizabeth finished dressing and left the room. She was going to leave the country as soon as possible. First, she'd stop at the hotel, collect all the proceeds, and go straight to the airport. By the time they sorted out who was to blame and who was right, she'd be long gone. What about the job? There's work everywhere. There are hotels in every country. She speaks English well. She'll be fine. And let the investigators get on Matthew and Emily's nerves with their interrogations and subpoenas. Let them have this instead of a holiday and a wedding. Elizabeth's plan was working perfectly. No one at the hotel was surprised to see her. Her partner was glad she could run out for a bite to eat while Elizabeth stood in her place. And when she returned from lunch, neither Elizabeth nor the money was in the register. The woman was traveling in a taxi towards the airport. When she got in and looked at the scoreboard, it turned out that the nearest flight was to Miami. How ironic. After all, this was the very plane she and Matthew were supposed to take on their holiday, and she, Elizabeth, would be on it. A passport was required for the trip, but Elizabeth had made it a long time ago, hoping for a holiday abroad. So the check-in went smoothly, and Elizabeth had no luggage. She went through passport control and was already declaring the amount of money she was going to take with her when a police squad appeared at the airport. Elizabeth was apprehended at the last stage. She almost managed to escape. The theft was reported very quickly by a hotel shift worker. Otherwise, the woman would have been on her way to fulfill her dream instead of traveling to the detention center. On the way, Elizabeth phoned Matthew. "Please come and get me out of here. I'm your wife, Matthew. For all the years we've been together, help me. Me. Where are you, Elizabeth? What happened? Aren't you in the hospital? I stole money from the hotel and tried to fly away. Will you help me? What did you do? Elizabeth, how can I help you? All I can do is hire a lawyer and bring you some things to give you. I have a key to your rented flat. That's not enough. Matthew, I'm going to jail now." In the course of the investigation, they found footage of Elizabeth throwing a smoke bomb and a receipt from the building shop where she bought it all, and footage from the hotel cameras, where they thought to look at the staircase cameras. They saw that Elizabeth had not taken the lift to her room that day. Matthew was also on the case. First as an accomplice, then he managed to be treated as a witness, proving that he himself had no intention of enriching himself, but was only aware of his wife's affairs. On the plus side, Matthew came to the police himself, taking the initiative to recover the funds. He was even allowed to see Elizabeth before the trial in the presence of a lawyer. He expected to see his ex-wife confused, depressed, remorseful. But Elizabeth looked defiant, cheerful, and just like before. She cast a burning glance at her ex-husband. "Why have you come?" "Elizabeth, why did you say so many things to the investigator? You realize you'll get a lighter sentence if you plead guilty. You need to confess. My lawyer and I are doing the best we can, but he can't work miracles." "Matthew, why do you want to do this? Do you still love me?" "I will always love you. You're not a stranger to me. We've become like family over the years." "You won't leave me? You still love me." "That's not what I'm saying. I love you as a human being, and I'll try to help you get your sentence reduced. But to do that, I need you to cooperate with the investigation and admit your guilt first." "What are you here for?" "To get me to confess, so I can go to prison for years, and you can live happily ever after." "You're not going to get anywhere, Matthew. You're going to prison with me. You used the stolen money, too. You didn't stop me when you could have, so you're an accessory after the fact. Let's see if your Emily will wait for you." "Elizabeth, think of the future. You stole my future when you betrayed me and cheated on me. The next time they saw each other was on the day of the trial, and that was the last time they saw each other. At the trial, Elizabeth stood by her testimony, even though the evidence pointed to the contrary. Part of the jury felt sorry for the woman and believed her. The other part was against it. Elizabeth was sentenced to 4 years in prison with restitution for the property stolen from a hotel customer. The money was returned for her by Matthew when his ex-wife was on her way to prison. The sentence was still fairly lenient considering the multiple charges of theft, damaging bank property, and causing minor injury to Emily, plus administrative fines for false statements. Elizabeth got a good lawyer. That was Matthew's last gift to her. Though Elizabeth didn't appreciate it and thought her ex-husband was a scoundrel trying to get rid of her so he could get married sooner. What Elizabeth did succeed in doing was ruining Matthew and Emily's holiday. They canceled the trip and spent most of the time in the hospital for the pregnancy. The nerves, smoke poisoning, and the fight with Elizabeth did not affect the pregnant woman's health well. But after a course of treatment, everything returned to normal. A week before the wedding, Emily was discharged healthy with an excellent prognosis for the baby. She was met by Matthew, who was exhausted by the worries of the last few days. He gave her a big hug and took her to their new home, which he had rented while he was waiting to be discharged. It was all decked out in flowers. It was the man's way of showing his love. After they got married and had a baby, they moved to another city, closer to the woman's parents. They wanted to protect themselves from the mischief of Elizabeth, who would sooner or later be released from prison. The fear that she might reappear in their lives did not let Emily go for a long time. She often saw her husband's ex-wife in bank offices, on the street, or in a shop. She was afraid that Elizabeth would steal her baby girl or hurt her. All of this developed into an anxiety disorder. Matthew even took Emily to a therapist. After fruitful work with him, the woman was able to forget the past and move on with her life. At least Emily was comforted for the first 4 years by the fact that Elizabeth is behind bars, and when she gets out, will not find them in any way. In prison, Elizabeth got the hang of it quickly. The rules by which they lived there were clear to her. Strike first, lie when it's profitable. Stay alert, obey the laws of local society, don't clash. But if a fight broke out, fight. Life in prison seemed bearable to the woman. All the more she entertained herself with thoughts of how she would get out. She made plans about how Matthew would see her and regret his choice, beg for her back. To her, he would leave his Emily, who had bored him for the past 4 years, along with the perpetually screaming child who was not yet Matthew's. Elizabeth had a lot of friends in prison. All the cellmates felt sorry for her. Still, it's a shame to go to prison because of the intrigues of an ex-husband who made a fraud with the mortgage, had a mistress, and then pinned everything on his wife to get rid of her and clear the way to a new happiness. At least that was the story the innocent Elizabeth told them about herself and her imprisonment. Deciding to follow her husband, the wife saw him getting on the wrong train and hopped on. "Mom, Dad, I want you to meet my boyfriend." Or rather, already with my fiancé, Emily said one evening when they were sitting together at dinner. Susan gasped. "Emily, how so? How long have you been dating him? And you haven't even said a word to us. It's all secret, all secret, all secret." "Mom, but why not?" "We've been dating for a while," Emily replied. "Michael came to see me with an injury. Anyway, it's been 2 months now, but the intentions are serious for both of us." "Daughter." "Congratulations to you," pronounced the father, who had been silent until then. "And when you had time to grow up, I didn't even notice. Time has flown by so quickly. You've graduated from the University of Medicine, you've begun to work, and now you're almost a bride." "Yes," said the mother thoughtfully. I want a family like yours." "You've always been perfect for me," Emily said. "You talk to each other a lot, still write messages to each other. Respectful to my brother and me, among others. I even gave you guys as an example to Michael and told him that you were the standard of a perfect relationship for me." "Emily, when are you going to introduce us?" Susan asked. "Michael and I are coming over for lunch this weekend." "Mom, you don't bother cooking much, okay? You'll make a lot of dishes again. You'll get tired, so just make it hot and that's it. Michael and I will pick up some cake on the way." "Emily, I'll certainly try, but you know me, I probably won't be able to do that," Susan replied, grinning. "I like cooking. I like feeding you guys goodies, but I'll try." Emily had been working as a trauma doctor at the clinic for several years now. She graduated from the local medical university and immediately got a job at the clinic. Sometimes she took on inpatient duty, but only a couple of shifts a month. And meeting Michael happened right in the medical office. He was a pilot, an airplane commander. "Hello, come in, Doctor," Emily said in her duty phrase. It was a phrase she said 30 times every day. She didn't put much emotion into it. Absolutely not. And this time she said it without even lifting her head. Michael entered in his pilot's uniform, and Emily couldn't take her eyes off him for long. Tall, statuesque, handsome. "Good afternoon," said the young man. "I didn't expect to see such a fragile, beautiful person in the trauma doctor's chair." Emily broke into a smile. "And you, I see, from ship to ball," the girl asked. "Yes, you're right. Just off the flight, we flew with a flight from Vienna, and there was a rowdy passenger flying with us. The whole crew had to subdue him. That's what he got." Michael showed Emily his injured arm. "Well, I hope you landed normally," Emily tried to joke. "As you can see, both myself and all the passengers on Vienna to New York flight 345 arrived at our destination on time," the man reported back to her. "Yes, you have a nervous job," Emily said and began to examine her arm. "I'm going to send you for x-rays now. We need to find out if there's a fracture. Here you go, room 205 is on the second floor. You'll take the x-rays and then come back to me." Michael nodded. He walked around for about 15 minutes, then came in again, but knocked first. Emily had already looked at his picture in the program. "I want to reassure you there is no fracture. I'm going to give you some ointment now. You will put ointment on your bruise twice a day. I promise your arm will be healed before the wedding," and she handed the pilot a prescription to the pharmacy. The young man took the prescription in his hands. Then he said, "Emily, I don't do this every day, but I want to take you out to dinner tonight." Emily, who had filled out the chart in the computer, immediately looked up. She was very excited about the offer and of course accepted it, but she needed to pause for the sake of decorum, which she did. "You know what, Michael, I don't get offers like this every day either, so I'll take it," Emily answered and smiled at the man. "Where should I pick you up?" he asked. Emily gave him the address of the apartment where she lived. Michael picked her up at 7 p.m., as they had agreed. Emily put on the most beautiful dress, came out to him in heels, thus conquering him with her beauty and charm. "I'm even more convinced that I didn't ask you to dinner for nothing. You're adorable," Michael said as he opened the car door for Emily. "Thank you so much for the compliment," she said shyly. They had a wonderful evening, a delicious dinner, pleasant company. It was as if they were made for each other, and that's what they both thought. Since then, they met often, not every day, because Michael had flights and Emily was on night duty. But they were always drawn to each other. Michael was telling his mother about his new girlfriend, Susan. She was an overbearing woman, constantly controlling her son, always wanting to know where he was and with whom. That's why she was wary of every girl he met. "Mom, Emily's great. She will definitely like you, I assure you," reported to his mother, like a schoolboy, 30-year-old Michael. "And where did you two meet?" inquired already Susan. organizing her son's interrogation. "In the hospital," he answered. In the voice of the mother was heard a note of surprise. "At the hospital?" "Yes, Mom, in the hospital. Remember, we had a fight in the cabin of the airplane? After that, I went to the hospital." "Doesn't she work there as a doctor?" "Is your new girlfriend a trauma doctor?" Susan asked. "Yes." "What hospital does she work at?" At the First Regional Hospital." "Mom, do you want to see her too?" My son snickered. "No, not yet." But Susan has already thought out that in the next long-distance flight of her son, she will go to this new girl for a checkup. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll introduce you to her very soon." But Susan met Emily faster than Michael had introduced them. 2 days later, she was already standing on the threshold of the hospital campus, knew everything about Emily that could be learned from the internet: how long ago she graduated from university, what is her work experience, in which office receives and until what time. How much is her appointment without an appointment? It was impossible to make an appointment. All the nearest appointment was taken, so Susan went to pay for it. The reason, of course, she made up allegedly a sore knee, although a woman like Michael's mother will run around the city for another 10 years, and nothing will hurt her. Next, Emily uttered a phrase that had become a familiar one. Susan didn't have to be reminded a second time. She flew into the office like a bullet. Emily was surprised to see her in her office, but she didn't let on. Michael showed her a picture of his mother and told her that she was overprotective. "Hello," Emily said in a sweet voice. "What are you complaining about, Susan?" "My knee hurts." Periodically, that is, she corrected herself in time. "Does it hurt now?" Emily asked. "Not right now," Michael's mother replied. "At the moment, I can suggest that you go for an MRI of the lower extremities. We'll see what kind of treatment will work best for you and what's wrong with your knee, because joint problems are very common in women your age. Let's go." The woman didn't want to go anywhere. That's not why she came here. "No, not right now. Maybe later." "Emily, that's not why I came here at all." The girl, who had been writing something in the patient's medical records, stood up from the table and looked at her in surprise. "Why did you come, Susan?" Emily said. "I can guess, though. You're Michael's mom. He's told me a lot of nice things about you." That made Susan smile. Really," she answered calmly. "And I want to know from you about the seriousness of your intentions for my son. Michael, he is my only son, and I do not want him to be used and abandoned as second-rate material. You have no idea how much I care about him. Yes, he works hard, he has money." Susan Emily interrupted her monologue. "I have very serious intentions for Michael. I love him, and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. I'm not the kind of girl who takes advantage of a man and leaves him. Don't worry. Now, if you have everything, you can go with your knee if you want to, and if it is really hurting, you can get it sorted out. Come in by appointment or call me, and I'll make an appointment for you myself. The patients sitting in the hallway are waiting for my appointment too." Susan got up from her chair. She wasn't very pleased that Emily had asked her to leave so unceremoniously, but she didn't let it bother her. "Very good, Emily. All right, I'll go. I hope Michael introduces us very soon. And I also hope Michael doesn't find out I'm here." And the woman left the office. At the end of the workday, Emily pondered the arrival of her potential future mother-in-law. Why had she come like that, unannounced? She considered her arrival to be insolent and rude, but she wouldn't tell Michael about it. After all, it was his mother, and she wished him nothing but the best. Emily also wondered what impression she had made on the woman, but of course she wouldn't know about that either, because Susan wouldn't ask about it directly. Emily had been very stressed about her mother's condition lately. Susan was thoughtful, but did not say anything, although they had a very trusting relationship. Although Emily lived separately, she came to her parents' house several times a week. Or they met with her mother on neutral territory in a cafe, at the theater, just in the park. Susan had recently begun to notice her husband's coldness toward her. She and Jason had been together for 30 years, and all that time it seemed to Susan that they treated each other very tenderly. And just the day before yesterday, she had gone to her favorite lingerie store that she and her husband often visited. She needed new pajamas, and in front of the store entrance, she saw her husband's car. Strange, Jason's here without me, she thought to herself. He must want to make me happy. While she thought about it, Jason came out of the store, got in his car, and drove away. Susan didn't even have time to react. With the hope that tonight she would get a present, the woman ran into the lingerie store satisfied. "Girls, please pick me up some pajamas," she said. "But not like my grandmother's, but with lace." "We understand," Susan, the sales clerks, who knew Susan and Jason's family, said friendly and began to pick out clothes for her. Jason ran out of the lingerie store in a hurry and left the bag with a lace bodysuit on the counter. The salesgirls didn't notice it right away, but only when Susan left. Coincidentally, Susan mixed up the packages and took the one that belonged to her husband Jason and left her own. It was only at home that she noticed this exchange of goods. That evening, excitedly after dinner, she unpacked her purchase. But what was her surprise when she saw in the bag not her pajamas at all, but a pink, lacy, translucent bodysuit. And the size was clearly not hers. She took the receipt out of the bag and decided to call the store, which was going to close in 15 minutes. She wanted to let her know that she had gotten the wrong package today. "Hello, girls, I came to see you today for pajamas," the woman said. She was recognized on the other end of the line. "I think I mixed up the bags. I didn't take my own, but in the bag with someone else's purchase," she said. "Do you have the receipt?" the girl on the other end of the line asked. "I'll look at it." "Yes, there is," said Susan, who pulled out a check for a considerable amount of money. She thought to herself that someone's man was very generous to his woman. "Please tell me the number of the discount card. We can use it to tell you who the purchase belongs to," the girl said. Just a second, Susan took the check, called the numbers on the receipt. This card and the purchase belonged to Jason Smith. Susan, hearing her husband's first and last name, fell into a stupor. But she needed to finish her dialogue with the store employee. "Okay, got it. I'll return the merchandise tomorrow and pick up mine. Thank you. Have a good evening," she said and hung up. After the conversation, she once again went to the gift bag that contained the item that wasn't hers, unfolded the bodysuit. It was about a size 44. Susan's size now was closer to a 58. This before, about 15 years ago, she might have fit into this bodysuit, but definitely not now. "Who's this for?" Jason bought lingerie. Did he have a mistress? Questions immediately began to pop into her head. The thoughts made a cold sweat run down her spine. "No, my husband is not capable of that. We have lived in love and harmony for 30 years. Raised 2 children," Susan thought. She sat down in the chair and couldn't move. It was as if she had been electrocuted. It was the phone call that brought her out of her thoughts. "Susan, hi. Why aren't you answering your phone?" It was her best friend Ashley calling. "Hello? Susan, can you hear me?" "I can hear you," Susan mumbled quietly. "Susan, what's wrong? What's wrong with your voice?" "I don't know. I think something's wrong. Can I come over now?" Ashley asked, who was in the neighborhood where Susan and Jason lived. "Yes, come over, I'm home," Susan added and hung up. She sat in the chair with the same unfortunate pink lace bodysuit in her hands until Ashley arrived. Here, look, she handed Ashley the bodysuit. What is it? Ashley asked, surprised, twirling the underwear in her hands. A bodysuit. My husband bought it for someone. Susan told her friend the story. Well, Susan, what if it's a mistake? You've already got yourself in a twist, her friend consoled her. Yeah, do you believe in this idea of a mistake? Jason was buying lacy lingerie, and it wasn't for me, Susan summarized. I saw it with my own eyes. Yes, you did. Don't you want to ask him yourself? You've always said that Jason and you have a trusting relationship, Ashley suggested. I guess I'll have to do that. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to do it, because then my whole idea of a perfect family will be destroyed overnight. But it's better than not knowing, Susan said. Let's have some tea, because I'm so thirsty. She bustled around the stove in the kitchen. Ashley stayed at her friend's house until evening, and then she left. Her presence calmed Susan a little, but the arrival of her husband from work brought her back down to earth. She decided not to tell him about the purchase she'd discovered. Hey Jason, how was your day? Susan asked her husband as usual. The same, sweetheart. As usual, Jason replied tiredly. Sorry, I won't eat dinner. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed. I have to get up early tomorrow, and I have an important meeting in the morning. I'll lie down in the living room so you won't be in the way. Susan tried to say the words in a firm voice so that she wouldn't show her husband her resentment. She wanted him to say, beloved, this is not disturbing me at all. I want to sleep tonight only with you. Therefore, what living room? But alas, the reality was quite different. Okay, Jason said, and went straight to the shower. Susan could hardly hold back her tears. In the morning, Jason left at about 6 a.m. Susan had just gotten up. Susan had just had time to get up when he ate breakfast and said, I walked over to my wife, kissed her, and left for work. Susan was alone. Emily, hi. Susan called her daughter for advice. Can I see you tonight? I'm sorry, Mom, I can't. I thought we said Friday, Emily replied. Did something happen to you? Yes, I did. All right, well, let's do it tonight at our cafe. All day, Emily thought not about her patients, but about what could have happened to her mother. As a doctor, she immediately thought that she had some serious illness. Therefore, in the evening at the cafe, the girl began with the topic of illness. Mom, don't worry. Nowadays, almost everything can be cured. We'll find you the best clinic, even abroad. Emily, what are you talking about? Susan couldn't hide her surprise, despite her daughter's pained look. I'm not sick. You mean you're healthy? I thought you'd found out you were ill, and that's why you've been so brooding lately. No, Amy, that's not the case. Susan pulled herself together to tell her the problem. It's that your father is cheating on me. Emily could not believe this information, as she had found out about it by accident. Susan recounted to her daughter the whole story with underwear, which completely accidentally surfaced in the woman's life. Yes, I never thought that my father could do such a thing, Emily said thoughtfully. Do you know who she is? No, and I want to find out soon. I just don't know how. Amy, I lied to Michael by telling him that we have a perfect family. We're just a normal family with a typical cheating husband. That's how it turns out, as sad as it looks. While the women were talking, the waiter brought them coffee. Thank you very much, Emily thanked him for the order. The waiter nodded in response. Mom, we need to think of a way to get him out. Let's think about it together. I just don't know how to act in a situation like this, because it's the first time I've been in it. And Susan cried softly. Mommy, please calm down. No one deserves your tears. I know it hurts, but we'll get through this together. Emily hugged her mom tightly. That night, Jason came in and said that he had to go to his mother's house in another town, that she was supposedly sick. "I'll take the train. It'll be faster and there won't be any traffic. I'm leaving tomorrow night." "Maybe I should come with you," Susan suggested timidly. "No, not yet," he replied quickly. "You know your mother doesn't like you very much, don't you? Let's not traumatize her just yet." "All right," Susan sighed. She had no relationship with her mother-in-law, no matter how they tried to make it work. Her mother-in-law was a bossy woman who wanted Jason to be with her. And when Susan came into his life, she didn't take kindly to her. Grandchildren Emily and Anthony loved immensely. But Susan never accepted. And Susan was very upset by this fact. But she gave up trying to please her mother-in-law. "What time is your train tomorrow?" Susan wondered whether Jason would lie or tell the truth. "At 5:10 p.m., her husband answered. "I'll walk you out." "You don't have to. Mind your own business. You have a lot of work to do around the house," he said. And it was true, there was always a lot of work in his house. It seemed to never end. Susan decided to follow her husband, who went to check on her sick mother. Arriving at the train station a little earlier, the woman saw her husband. True, he got on the train, not the one Susan expected, but the one that was going in the exact opposite direction. And Susan decided on her own head to quickly jump into the last carriage of the train to follow him. After going through all the cars and finding Jason in one of them, Susan sat behind him. It wasn't a long ride, only about an hour. Susan filled the stop. It was the Kalanina station. It was dark outside the window. There was some small, almost abandoned station. Susan was afraid to get off here following her husband. But on the platform she saw clearly that her husband went to the girl, kissed her, and they walked together by the hand into the darkness. Susan, seeing this picture, cried. The train moved on. Where was she going now? She didn't know. She just sat and rode in silence. After half an hour she came to her senses and realized she had to get off, so she got off at the nearest station. The station was quite large, but where to go, the woman did not know. So she called her daughter. "Emily, hi." Susan sobbed into the phone. "Mom, what's wrong? Where are you?" Emily tried to make sense of her words through the noise of the train and her mom's tears. "I don't know where I am," Susan continued to sob. "Mom, calm down. What is near you right now?" The daughter was trying to find out her mother's whereabouts. She didn't know she had traveled far away. "I went to the station to follow Jason. He said he was going to his mother's, but he got on a different train, so I got on the other train with him and followed him. He got off at some station called Kalinin, and there was a girl waiting for him." From these words, Susan again became very offended, and she sobbed again. "Mom, what is the name of your station?" Susan said the name of the station, which she read here on the sign. "Now find yourself some place to wait for us. As soon as I find out where you are, I'll come straight over." After talking to her mother, Emily rushed to open a map on her phone. Michael was beside her. He had the day off today. "Michael, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you into our family problems, but I can't do it any other way. Mom needs help." At the same time, Emily searched for the name of the station where Susan was now. She found it quickly and found that it was about 120 kilometers from the city. "Yeah, that's a long way for Mom to go. But we have no choice but to go pick her up. She's very depressed," Emily said. Michael went with her. He was driving, which was good because she was very nervous. And there was no telling if she would be able to drive for that long. Emily and Michael had a bit of a mix-up. It took about 2 to get to the station. With it already dark outside, Susan waited for them inside the station. During this time, she had already had time to digest her situation and calm down a bit. But still her condition was unstable. "Mom, are you okay?" The first thing Emily asked, meeting her mother's eyes. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm sorry for making you drive almost at night to pick me up." Susan felt uncomfortable, especially in front of Michael. "It's okay, Susan. Things happen in life." Michael was sympathetic. After picking up the woman, they all walked together to the parking lot where their car was parked. The drive back was faster, as it always was. Emily drove her mom home and they stayed the night at her house. After Susan fell asleep, Emily didn't dare call her dad, it was too late. But she couldn't bear to watch her parents' family crumble literally before her eyes. Jason picked up the phone relatively quickly. "Dad?" "Hi," Emily said into the phone. "Oh, Emily, hi. Is something wrong that you're calling at this late hour?" "Yes, Dad, there is. Why don't you tell me what's going on between you and Mom?" "Daughter, let's you and I talk about everything when I come from Mom's." Father's voice was anxious. "Dad, can you not lie to me? I know you're not at Grandma's." The father on the other end of the line fell silent. "Daughter, let's talk about everything afterwards. I don't feel comfortable talking right now," and he hung up. Emily didn't realize that it was pointless to ask her father for details now. She just had to be patient and wait. But she didn't have much patience. In the morning, Emily was awakened by a phone call from an unknown number. "Hello," Emily said through her sleep. She always slept so sweetly at her parents' house. "Is this Emily?" The pleasant female voice on the other end of the line asked. "Yes, it's me." Emily jumped up on her bed. "I'm Amber, your father's mistress. We need to meet tomorrow night at Cafe Rebecca at 8 o'clock in the evening," the girl said very quickly. "Okay," was all Emily had time to reply. Amber quickly hung up the phone, apparently so her father wouldn't overhear the conversation. Emily didn't tell anyone about the call, not her mother, not Michael, not her father. She decided to go to the meeting first, and then act according to circumstances. Cafe Rebecca was located in the center of the city and was considered one of the most prestigious establishments. Emily had been there only once before, as a student, when she had gone there with her friends. This time Emily felt at ease already. She had money for this cafe. Last time, when she was still a student, going to this place took half of her scholarship. Once inside, she searched her eyes for this Amber. Emily didn't know what she looked like, but her dad's mistress had found her and waved her over. Emily cautiously made her way in her direction. "Emily, I'm going to have a short conversation with you. After all, you and I are not friends. I urge you to keep quiet about our conversation, otherwise it will be worse for you." Amber started the conversation. Emily carefully sat down in the soft chair. A waiter immediately came over to her. "I'll have a cedar latte, please," she said. One thing Emily remembered from her college days was that Rebecca's made very good coffee. The waiter nodded and walked toward the kitchen. "I have a favor to ask of you," Amber continued. "Get off my Michael, and I'll get off your father's back." Emily didn't understand anything. "What are you talking about? And what right do you have to tell me to leave Michael?" The girl was indignant. "I have every right," Amber shouted. "You're the reason Michael left me. He met you and left me." "What the hell are you talking about, Amber?" Emily still couldn't understand what kind of nonsense this girl sitting across from her was talking about. "Before Michael met you, he and I dated. He was in love with me, and then he met you, and he turned his attention to you and forgot all about me. But I didn't let that go. I found out about your family and I got your father to fall in love with me. I had no trouble seducing him. Apparently he was so caught up in his old family relationships that he jumped on me like a hungry dog on a bone. What did your mommy do to him?" Amber laughed. "Don't you dare say that about my mommy," Emily exclaimed. She hated to hear such words about her parents. "What's your dad like in bed?" Amber continued to play. "If you want your father back in the family, leave Michael alone," Amber said, and got up from the table. "Otherwise, I'll make him marry me, which will completely break your mother. And I'm not kidding. I'm no joke." After saying that, Amber walked out of the cafe. Emily was shocked. The waiter had long ago brought her the cedar latte she had ordered, but she couldn't bring herself to take even one sip of coffee. Finally, she took that sip. The coffee warmed her up so much. And she began to think about what she should do next, whether she should tell Michael or her father or her mother, or leave Michael for the sake of bringing her father back into the family. Would her parents be able to maintain a good relationship after all this? Emily was at a crossroads. She then decided to just talk to her father about what was going on between him and her mother. The next morning, after canceling an appointment at work, Emily arrived at her father's workplace. "Emily, what are you doing here so early in the morning? Why aren't you at work?" her father asked indignantly. He was uncomfortable that the whole mistress thing might come out. "Dad, I came here so you could tell me everything. I don't recognize Mom. She's completely exhausted. Tell me, who is this woman?" Emily went straight to talking about the mistress. "She's a flight attendant," Jason replied nervously. "But it's clear to me now," Emily said out loud, thinking she was speaking to herself. "What has become clear to you, Emily?" "I don't get it," her father was perplexed. Nothing. "Dad, how serious is your relationship with this Amber?" "Oh, you already know her name." "Good for you," Jason said ironically. "Stop being ironic, Dad. Our family is crumbling before our eyes. How serious is your relationship with this woman?" "Honestly, daughter, I had a crush on her, but I didn't think it would go this far. Admittedly, the initiative came from her. But of course she wouldn't have missed out on a man like you, wealthy, successful, athletic, and handsome." "Dad, don't start talking about Mom. Have you seen the state she's in? Or are you only interested in your job and this Amber?" Emily was ready to explode, but held back as best she could. "I'm not ready to leave the family yet," her father admitted. "You know I have a lot in common with Susan. I can't leave it all behind like that. But I can't leave Amber either." This is when Emily couldn't take it anymore. "Daddy, don't you realize she's just using you?" the girl screamed. "Emily, calm down." Her father tried to calm her down, but to no avail. Emily burst into hysterics and ran out of the study, slamming the door loudly. She didn't get to have a frank conversation with her father. Jason was alone. He paced back and forth in his large office with his hands behind his back. He realized that this affair had gone too far, and it wouldn't be easy for him to get out of it. But what should he do? Leave Susan and go to Amber, the woman who'd made him young again? Or live out his life with his wife? He didn't know the answers to those questions, but he realized that his relationship with his daughter Emily had soured. Emily ran out of her father's office, ran to her car in the parking lot, and tried to calm down in the car. She didn't manage to calm down right away. When she was able to drive, the girl decided to go to her mother's house and talk to her. Today was Susan's day off. She was a little surprised at her daughter's sudden appearance. "Emily, why aren't you at work?" asked a confused Susan, who hadn't slept well the previous night. "And what's wrong with your eyes? Have you been crying?" Emily went straight to the kitchen. Susan, without further ado, put the kettle on. "Mom, I saw her," Emily pronounced. "Her who?" "Well, Dad's mistress. Her name is Amber, and she works as a stewardess." Susan was wary of the word mistress, but where had Emily been able to see her? "She called me on her own." Emily began to tell her story, and got upset again, reliving it all over again. "Mom, the thing is, this Amber stole Dad on purpose for Michael. Daughter, are you okay?" What are you talking about? Susan didn't realize if her daughter was delusional or telling the truth. Mom, I'm perfectly fine, she told me herself. If I want my father back in the family, I have to leave Michael. Allegedly, Michael dumped her and left her for me. I don't get it. Susan shook her head, trying to put what she had heard in order. Amber doesn't like Jason at all. That's what I'm telling you right now. She'd gotten involved with him to get back at me. And Jason fell for it. But she's beautiful, young, well-groomed, and she's got a lot of nerve. She told me that I had to leave Michael, and then Jason would come back to you. Susan was silent. She finally got the full meaning of what she had said. I have a counter question. Do you think I'd want your father after all this? And how disgusting. Jason falling for some young girl, betraying me, betraying the kids. Emily, do you have to move on with Michael? You have to make your own destiny. And if you love Michael, then by no means sell your love. Don't leave him for this Amber. If Michael is with you now, then he loves you. Emily, hearing these words from Susan's mom, walked over to her and hugged her tightly. Mommy, but I feel so sorry for you. Can you survive such a betrayal? I can. For your sake, Anthony, I can do anything and survive it, Susan replied. The women were unable to continue the conversation further, as Emily's younger brother Anthony came in from practice. He was still a high school student, finishing 11th grade this year and preparing to go to university. Hi, little brother, Emily said the phrase in a deliberately cheerful voice. Anthony doesn't need to know anything. Hey sis, why aren't you at work? I'm working the second shift today. I just stopped by to see you and Mom. Emily and her mom decided to talk next time. Emily went to work. Michael. She decided not to say anything yet, but she wasn't planning on leaving him either. Amber called Emily 2 days later, though. So, Emily, are you going to leave Michael alone? Mistress, she's never been treated with ceremony. Remember, I will never leave Michael alone. And you stay away from my father after all. I won't. I'm going to make Jason leave your mother, and I'm going to leave her with nothing. You little bitch, Emily almost shouted into the phone. But you'll never get away with it, no matter how hard you try, and the girl herself hung up the receiver. Her hands were shaking from the vile words she had just heard. 2 days later, Jason didn't come home for the first time. Emily had been told about it by his mother. A week later, he told Susan he was leaving her for someone else. He couldn't hide it anymore. Susan, thank you for all the years you and I have been together. Thank you for the kids, for Emily and Anthony. They're wonderful. But I'm sorry I met someone else, Jason said. It was hard for him to say those words. He'd been thinking about them for a long time. But Amber had forced him to leave his family. She'd blackmailed him into losing her, and he'd grown attached to her and couldn't live a day without her. After saying that, Jason went up to his bedroom to pack his suitcase. He did so quickly, and on his way out he added, I'll file for divorce myself. When he left, Susan let the tears fall. In her opinion, it was the end of her family, which she had so lovingly created all this time. But somehow life had to go on. Susan stood by Emily. Amber, learning that Emily wasn't going to leave Michael, freaked out and decided to act out to spite her. Daily, she told her lover Jason to leave the family. Jason, when you leave that Susan of yours and come to me so we can have a full family. I'm going to have a baby for you, Amber told Jason. His mistress took him in her affection, and Jason gave in, plucked up his courage, and told Susan the truth. And Amber rejoiced. After Jason came to her for good, she'd pictured Emily. But the reaction of her powerlessness, her anger at her father for abandoning her mother. But it was Emily's own fault. Amber had warned her. Emily chose not to retaliate against Amber. Spent all her free time at her mom's, which is exactly what her loved ones wanted. Amber, not seeing the wounded response at all, decided to move on. She wanted Michael too. and she didn't need Jason. Michael was her target. So she needed to set up a meeting with Michael. Amber and Michael worked for the same airline. Michael was a co-pilot at first and flew in the allotted hours and proved himself to his superiors in an extremely positive way. He became an aircraft commander. Amber worked for the airline as a flight attendant. She liked Michael immediately. In general, Amber had a love for pilots since childhood. She could not explain it in any way. But she read novels in her youth. For some reason, she imagined her soulmate was a pilot and no one else. When she saw Michael, she realized she was lost. She flirted with him for a long time, trying to draw attention to herself. Michael, who had no girlfriend at the time, fell for her advances and seductions. But he did not feel anything serious about her and told her repeatedly. But Amber, at that moment, everything was fine. After all, Michael was with her, and it was the most important thing for her. And then Michael met Emily and disappeared. He left Amber, and he was honest with her about everything. She was furious, and she couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept that Michael had traded her for someone else. She didn't immediately follow Michael's new girlfriend. In principle, it wasn't hard to do. Emily had come to the airport a few times to pick Michael up after work. Then she found out all about Emily, her family, tracked down her father, and arranged a chance meeting in the parking lot. Amber went back to her big job to get Michael back, but he never came back to her. And one day, while leaving the airport with Michael, Amber struck up a conversation with him. "Michael, hey." Amber caught up with him. "How are you doing?" "Hey, yeah, I'm good." "Michael, I wanted to tell you that I'm not mad at you anymore," Amber said with a sly tone. "I finally met my love, too." "Yeah, I'm really happy for you. I really am." "I hope he's a good man?" Michael asked. "Yes, he is. And you know him?" "I know him. You intrigue me. Who is he? Tell me." "That's a mystery. Michael, why don't we go to the coffee shop tonight? Or do you want to come over for a cup of tea, just for old time's sake?" Amber needed to lure him into her web. She had a plan in her head. Michael gave it some thought and agreed. "Shall we? I'm not in any hurry right now. Emily's on shift till tonight." "Oh, great, to our favorite coffee shop like we used to." Aha. And Michael and Amber wrapped up at a diner near the airport. "Have you had breakfast, Michael?" No, I haven't. So I'm going to get some cereal with peanuts and tea." "That's right." "I do," Amber admitted to him, and ordered all the things she had listed. He ordered himself scrambled eggs and sausage and an espresso. Amber needed to lure Michael to her house at all costs. To do so, she opted for a sleeping pill in her purse, which she needed to discreetly slip into his drink. She had no trouble doing so. When Michael went to the bathroom, she calmly took and added the medicine to his coffee. Only she made a small dosage, so that he did not pass out right here in the cafe. Unsuspecting, Michael calmly ate his scrambled eggs, began to drink. After taking a couple of sips, he felt weak and drowsy. "I guess I'm so tired from the flight today that I'm really sleepy," Michael said, closing his eyes as he walked. Amber realized that now was the time to take action. "Michael, why don't we go to my place? You can take a nap at my place, because it's a long drive home." He couldn't resist, so he agreed. Happy, Amber took him under her arm and quickly led him to her car. As they drove, Michael fell asleep. She had to work hard to wake him up when they arrived and could barely get him up to her. When she got Michael into her apartment, Amber took him into the bedroom, took off his shirt, and covered him with a blanket. Then she undressed herself and lay down next to him. Amber did all of this so that she could take pictures of them lying in bed together and doing well. Those pictures were safely taken. There was no Photoshop needed. Everything looked so realistic that even a simpleton would believe it. After that, Amber got out of bed, changed into her house clothes, and lay down on the couch. Jason was on a business trip. There was no need to fear that he would suddenly come home. Michael woke up 4 hours later. He couldn't realize anything at first. Where am I? He whirled his head around, trying to figure it out. "Honey, I've got you," Amber said affectionately as she ran in at the sound of his voice. "You and I had such a good time." Michael couldn't understand a thing. What time? My head hurt like I'd been drinking nonstop for a week. I thought we were at a coffee shop. How did I get here? You invited me to your place. So I went. I love you. Amber hugged him. Michael pulled her arms off his shoulders. Don't, Amber. I don't believe there could be anything between us. You don't believe it, but look. The girl showed him the pictures she had taken. You set this whole thing up on purpose. You lured me to the cafe to slip me something. Michael couldn't believe the veracity of the pictures Amber was showing him. Michael, it was your initiative, and I just went along with it, Amber replied. Don't you ever send those pictures. Ashley, do you understand me? Do you? Are you threatening me? No, not yet. I'm just warning you. Michael barely got out of bed and walked out of the apartment. Amber was rubbing her hands together because she'd done it. Michael went first to the airport to pick up his car because he'd left work in a hired car. Then he was in a hurry to get back before Ashley got home from work. He broke all the rules, but he made it to the apartment where they'd been living together for months. He got there a half hour before she got back, changed quickly, and showered. All those half hours he wondered if he had something with Amber or if she'd cheated on him. Hi, Ashley greeted cheerfully when he got home from work. Hi, Ashley. Michael came out to greet her, gave her a kiss and a hug. I missed you so much. I missed you too. How's your mom? Michael suddenly asked her. Not good, Ashley said sadly. She can't get over it, and I don't know what to do. Ash, it's going to take time. Unfortunately, nothing else will help. I'm sure Susan will come through this ordeal with flying colors. We just have to wait a little longer. I certainly hope so, Ashley replied. She's spending a lot of time with Anthony. He's finishing 11th grade and getting ready for college. Her father hasn't called or written since he met Amber, and it's like he's lost his mind. As they say, a gray hair in his beard, a black eye in his rib. What are your plans for tonight, my love? Ashley asked playfully. I just want to lie in front of the TV with my favorite girl, Michael replied. I don't mind. Michael and Ashley spent the day together as they had planned. One day, Ashley went to her father's office to pick up his papers. Her mother had asked her to do so. Susan didn't want to see her husband again, so she asked her to go to Ashley's father's office. Ashley stopped by after work and he wasn't there alone. Emily was sitting in her father's office. This meeting hadn't gone too badly, even though it had been unpleasant. What can you do? Dad, Mom asked me to pick up my papers, Emily started the conversation. Give them to me and I'll go. They're in the locker room now in my briefcase. Jason went to the locker room, and Emily was alone with Amber in the office. She restrained herself from saying anything hurtful to Amber, but she wasn't holding back. How did you like Michael in bed? Amber asked ironically. What's it to you? Emily snapped at him. Or does my father not suit you at all? No, I'm fine with him, but I liked Michael better. Stop it, Amber. Emily yelled at her. By the way, Michael and I had a lot of fun recently, she said, as if she didn't mean it. A couple days ago, Michael came over for a couple hours. Didn't he tell you that? Oh, that's too bad. I thought you two had a very trusting relationship. I don't believe you, Emily replied sharply. And I have proof. Amber pulled out her phone to show Emily the pictures from earlier. Well, I think we look great in bed together. Don't you think? Emily flipped through the pictures, unable to take her eyes off them. While she was looking at them, her father came back with the papers. Here you go, he said. Emily took the documents with trembling hands and left the office without saying anything. What's wrong with her? Dad asked Amber. I don't know, she said. I don't really care about your daughter, to be honest. Emily walked on, tears dripping from her eyes. She couldn't believe that her beloved Michael, her sweetheart, was cheating on her. The girl got into her car, let the tears flow, and then drove home. She needed to find out all the things that Michael was hiding from her. When she arrived, Michael was home. Hi, sweetheart, he said. But Emily didn't say anything, just looked up at him with her big, blue, crying eyes. Is something wrong? Something with Mom? Michael asked her. No, Mom's fine. But our relationship is over, Emily replied. What are you talking about? Anne, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm saying you can go back to your Amber. You and I are no longer on the same path. How could you go out with me and get in bed with her? After saying that, Michael realized what he was talking about. Amber showed her the pictures she'd taken when he'd suddenly fallen asleep. I'll explain everything to you right now, he tried to justify himself. I don't want to hear any of your explanations. I've got it all figured out, Emily said harshly, though it hurt her to say such words to the man she loved. Now please take your things and go live at your place. Michael realized that Emily was very upset with him. He himself would have been offended too, so without further ado he gathered the necessary things and left the apartment. Emily was left alone. She cried all evening, sitting on the couch and remembering their relationship with Michael, how it had started, how much romance there had been in the beginning, how she had fallen in love with him as a freshman girl, how she had waited for him from flights. She remembered and cried even harder from the hopelessness that nothing could be taken back. In the evening, her mom came to visit her. Susan's visit was planned. She wanted to pick up the documents Emily had traveled to her father's office to get. Susan saw Emily crying. What's wrong, daughter? She asked. Now Susan had to comfort her daughter. Mom, it's Amber. Imagine today when I went to my father's house, she showed me pictures of her and Michael in bed. It was a few days ago, Emily said, sobbing. She felt sorry for herself. Are you sure it's not a montage? Susan asked. Just knowing Michael and his attitude toward you, I can't believe it. What did Michael say to that? And I did not listen to him, said the daughter. The picture was enough for me. But you can't do that. You always have to hear 2 points of view. This Amber's interest is clear to me. She wants Michael back any way she can. She even went through Jason, but she realized she didn't get her ex back. She's angry, and she's being mean. Mom, not making excuses for him, her daughter continued. I'm not making excuses. That Amber is an asshole, and she needs to be dealt with in her own way, Susan said firmly. She was belligerent. I realize now that Jason is just a fling for her. And I've been asking myself for days, why didn't I fight for my husband? And Emily, maybe you should have given that girl a big send-off. Mom, is that you? Emily didn't recognize her usually quiet and calm mother. How do you want to fight for Dad? I don't know yet. It's Anthony's birthday, so we need to get the whole family around the family table soon. Can you help me? And we'll invite my dad too, of course. Without Amber, of course. And we'll reminisce about all the good times we used to have together. Mom, I don't know what it'll look like, but I'll help, Emily nodded. Her resentment toward Michael had been put on the back burner for now. Emily spent all her free time preparing for her brother's birthday. Anthony was turning 18. He decided to celebrate his holiday twice, with friends in a cafe and with relatives at home. A couple days before the party, Anthony called his father. "Dad, hi. I hope you didn't forget. It's my birthday." "No, of course not, son. How could I forget?" Jason replied sincerely. He had a wonderful relationship with his son. He didn't want to lose that relationship to a new love. "Dad, we're going out with the family. I'll see you at home on June 25th. Will you come?" Jason paused for a moment, which made Anthony want to get upset, and then he said, "I will, Anthony, thank you. I just hope you'll come without her. You know, Mom, Emily, the in-laws, no one will be happy to see her." I'm not such a fool, his son realized. And Jason did keep his word and came to the party on time and without his Amber. Susan met her husband as if there had never been any marital discord in their relationship. She was affectionate, friendly with him. It was a family celebration that everyone enjoyed, and the birthday boy himself was happy, and a full family, and gifts that made him relatives. After the feast was nearing completion, Anthony with a glass suddenly rose from the table. "My relatives, I want to say a big thank you to all of you. Thank you for what I have. To you, Dad, I say a special thank you for coming, and we are together with you now as before." Anthony's words touched both his father, mother, and Emily deeply. Even tears rolled out of their eyes and fell into the glasses with sparkling wine. "Emily, where is Michael?" the father asked his daughter. He didn't know they were in a fight and Michael was on a flight. She had lied to him. She didn't feel like telling her father the whole story right now at the party. The family and friends slowly began to disperse. But Jason, after drinking a little wine with Susan's brother, didn't want to leave. "Dad, why don't you stay home tonight?" suggested Emily, who wanted to annoy Amber. Dad didn't refuse the offer. He was glad he did, because he would have been too embarrassed to ask to stay over. He and Vitaly sat outside that night. Jason went to his and Susan's bedroom, as was his habit, and only when he lay down did he realize that he had done something wrong. But Susan didn't kick him out, but decided to use her mistress's methods. As soon as Jason fell asleep, Susan took a picture of them together. All night Jason's phone was ringing off the hook with missed calls, but Susan turned down the sound on her phone and fell asleep peacefully. She was furious that Jason wasn't answering her. She knew exactly where her lover had gone and was very worried about missing Michael. She couldn't let Jason go now, or she'd be left with nothing. And she didn't want that. She called all night, then all morning. Jason woke up around 0800 and grabbed his phone and saw about 30 missed calls from Amber. He immediately called her back. "So where were you all night?" "My son's birthday party ran late," Jason said. Amber answered with a look of displeasure. "I fell asleep on the couch in the living room," Jason lied. "I'll come over and explain everything." Jason hadn't even had breakfast, leaving his former home. Susan had sent the pictures from the night before to Amber through Emily right after her husband left. Amber got those pictures and was just furious. As soon as Jason walked in, she gave him a huge scandal. He didn't confront her. He had a headache. He drank a cup of coffee with a hangover and drove to work. He didn't have the energy for a fight. He wasn't sure if he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Amber. Meanwhile, Emily's mom insisted that Emily have a serious talk with Michael. "You're the master of your own destiny," Susan told Emily. "And if you want to live the rest of your life with him, talk to him. Tell him the truth about Amber. Tell him that she is now your father. Michael, on the other hand, is still in the dark about who Jason and the mistress are. We need to untangle this snake pit. And who's going to do it if not you and me?" Over breakfast, they began to spend many a night at my parents' house. "Michael calls you," Susan said. "Yes, every day. But I don't answer the phone. I think he betrayed me." "What if Amber set this whole thing up on purpose to break you two up? You have to meet him." Emily thought about her mom's suggestion for a long time. On the one hand, she really wanted to meet Michael. She missed him so much. But on the other hand, she immediately remembered those nasty pictures, and she didn't want anything else. But the meeting presented itself. Michael was waiting for Emily at her work. "We need to talk to you right away," he said. "This can't go on much longer. I have to explain everything to you." Without speaking, he took Emily's hand and led her to his car. She didn't resist. In her subconscious, she was looking forward to this meeting. "I owe you an explanation about these pictures," Michael began. "Yes, they were taken at her house. But I honestly don't remember when. One thing I do remember is that Amber and I were leaving work after a hard shift. She invited me to a coffee shop near work. Since you were working through the evening, I agreed to sit for an hour and have breakfast. And after I drank the tea, it was all a blur. I don't remember how I got into her car. I don't remember how I ended up in bed at her place. You may not believe me, but I remember everything very, very vaguely. It was like something had been put in my drink." "I believe you," Emily replied. "I believe that she's capable of it, because she's been trying to break us up for so long. And your biggest mistake right now is that you didn't tell her that Amber is your ex-girlfriend, and she wants you back so badly." Michael, hearing those words, turned sharply toward Emily. "How do you know that?" "Amber told me. You know that Amber and Daddy's mistress are the same person." He couldn't hide his surprise. "But how? So your dad is dating my ex-girlfriend?" "Yeah, that's right. But that's not all, Michael. Your ex-girlfriend Amber specifically started dating my dad Jason to get back at me. I went out with her, and she told me in no uncertain terms to dump you so she'd leave my dad alone. But I didn't, as you can see, because I love you. And that really pissed her off. So she decided to set me up with pictures of you. But that doesn't mean that nothing happened between you two." "I mean, it doesn't," Emily said. "Michael, I swear to you that nothing happened between me and Amber, at least not while I was in my memory." "Yes, I do," Emily said affectionately. "But why didn't you tell me earlier that you knew all about Amber?" "I didn't want to involve you in the family squabbles," she said. "Does your father know about Amber? Did she go out with him on purpose?" "No, no one's told him that yet. I want to tell him, but I just need him to hear it from Amber. He might not believe me." "Then we'll build on that," Michael suggested. "Let's get Amber out in the open." "How do we do that?" Emily asked again. "You need to meet with her again, but record the entire conversation. I'll call her now and make an appointment," Michael suggested. Emily nodded. There was one number in her phone book. She found it, called it. It rang. "Hello," Amber answered. "Amber, this is Emily, Michael's current girlfriend. Remember when we met you at the coffee shop?" "Yeah, of course I remember. I'm going to be your stepmom soon." Amber said into the phone. "Amber, if your offer to dump Michael still stands, I'm in. But we need to meet again and talk things through. I need assurances," Emily said into the phone. "I'll never give up on Michael, so it's on. Do you want to meet? Well, let's do it tonight at 8 p.m. at the same place," Amber suggested. "Okay," Emily replied. "Well, that's half done," Michael said as Emily hung up the phone after talking to Amber. "Yeah, but I'm so scared to do all this, like I'm going to betray you tonight," she added. "Don't be afraid of anything, Emily. I'll always be there for you. Trust me," Michael said and leaned in to kiss her. Emily did not resist for the first time in a long time. After that conversation, they drove to the apartment where they had lived together before their fight. Emily began to get ready to talk, as it was already 4 o'clock. "I could take you to a coffee shop," Michael offered, but she declined. Emily was afraid that Amber would notice him and not believe that the whole situation was real. Finally, evening came, and Emily drove to Boston in her car. It wasn't a long drive, so she got there in 15 minutes. Amber was already sitting at a table in the cafe in all her war paint. "You've had enough of Michael, haven't you?" Amber asked. "No, I love Michael, but I'm sorry about Mom. She's very depressed. She doesn't go out, she doesn't eat, she lied. I really hope that Daddy will come back to the family and everything will get better. Mom will revive at least a little. But I need to know that if I leave Michael, you'll leave Dad alone." "Yeah, I promise you that. You leave my Michael and I'll leave your father. I don't love him. I don't love him. I only needed him to accomplish my goal," Amber said loudly. Emily had time to turn on the recorder on her phone and write it all down. "Okay," Emily replied. "I believe you, Michael is yours." With those words, Emily got up from the table without ordering anything. Everything she wanted to get, she had already gotten. She drove home and told Michael everything. Amber believed it. "You have to play your part now," Emily said. She and Michael agreed that he was in the play and would play the role of the jilted and hurt boyfriend. They wanted to get Amber to dump her wounded father. Amber found out about Emily dumping Michael 2 days later. She caught up with him when they got off work together again. "Michael, is it true? Did you and Emily break up?" "Yes, I did," he answered her. "So now I have a chance again?" Amber asked ambiguously. "But everyone always has a chance," he answered ambiguously and walked on. Amber took his answer as a call to action and acted on it. She needed to tell Jason that they were breaking up. But first she needed to make sure Michael was in her good graces. Amber didn't want to be alone. One night, Amber called Michael, and he was at Emily's at the time, but Michael answered the phone. "Hey, why don't you and I get together? I've missed you." He paused for a moment, then agreed. "All right, let's go to a coffee shop near your house." Emily didn't like hearing that, but Michael reassured her. "Emily, honey, but just be patient. As soon as we get Amber out in the open, we'll get you married. We have to get your father out of that stewardess clutches." Michael began packing for his meeting with Amber. Emily let him go with a heavy heart. What kind of girl would send her favorite guy to meet her ex-girlfriend? And a very attractive one at that. Michael arrived at the cafe. Amber arrived about 5 minutes after him, walked up to him and gave him a hug and a kiss on the cheek. "Michael, I missed you so much." "The test was a given," Amber said. "And I missed you a little too," Michael added a little later. "I was told you grieved after me. And not for long. Did you find a new boyfriend quickly?" She faltered, but she had to answer something. "Yeah, it was just a fling. I thought I told you about him. An older man just bored with his boring family life, got attracted to me. I'm bored with him. We have very different interests." "Interested in you, or did you seduce him?" Michael clarified. "Michael, but let's not get into that. I'm way past that stage of my life. I'm going to tell him today that it's over between us, even though he's so attracted to me. But I want you and only you, and I'll talk about it 1,000 times. But I can't promise you anything serious. I've just been dumped, and I'm disappointed in every woman in the world right now. Trust me, I can prove to you that not all women are assholes. There are some decent ones. We'll see about that. First, you need to break up with your current boyfriend." "I'll do it tonight," Amber replied. Michael and Amber sat in the cafe for about an hour and a half talking about nothing. Michael was once again convinced that Amber wasn't right for him. She was too empty for him. Amber told Jason some unpleasant news that evening. "Jason, we have to break up," she began the conversation. The man had had a busy day today. He hadn't eaten most of the day. He hadn't waited for dinner from Amber either. "Amber, what the hell are you talking about?" he said. "I'm tired as a dog today. I'm hungry, but there's nothing at home. You were home all day yesterday. Why didn't you at least boil some borscht? And now you're telling me you're breaking up with me." "Jason, I'm not kidding. I want to break up with you." "I mean it," Amber added. "What's the reason?" the man asked sternly. "I don't love you. I don't feel like you're my man. So I'm asking you to get out of my apartment today and tomorrow." Jason, these words really hurt him. Had he, at almost 50, lived to be dumped by a young girl? "Didn't I give you enough money?" he asked. "It's fine," Amber replied. "But you're not my man. I'm sorry, I don't want to get into this anymore. I'm tired." Amber left the bedroom where the conversation was taking place. Jason immediately packed his suitcase and left the apartment. He had nowhere to go back to. He wasn't going straight to Susan's house. So he drove back to the hotel, frustrated and angry not so much at Amber as at himself for being such a fool. He'd thought she was the girl he was going to spend the rest of his life with. How had he been wrong? Naive. As soon as Jason left, Amber silently called Michael. "Michael, I want you to know that I broke up with my Jason. He just moved out of my apartment. You can come over." Amber was pleased. She couldn't believe that her plan had finally worked and that she and Michael would be reunited very soon. But how wrong she was. Michael told Amber that he couldn't come to her place today because his mom was sick and he needed to be there for her. Amber believed him, saying she was expecting him any time. And Michael, of course, was at Emily's the whole time. He's the one who told her what Amber said about breaking up with her dad. I wonder where he went now. Probably to a hotel, because he has nowhere else to go, Emily said. "Emily, listen. What if I called my dad and asked him to come over to my mom's house and tell him that we wanted to have dinner at my mom's house? What do you think?" Michael suggested. "That's not a bad idea. Call him." Michael agreed, and Emily immediately dialed her father. "Dad, hey, what are you doing right now? Do you have time right now? Why don't you come over to Mom's? We're planning on going over there too. We're going to sit around and drink tea from the samovar." "Emily, would it be okay for me to go to her house uninvited? I was mean to her, leaving her," Jason said. "Dad, but Anthony and I are calling you, and I think she'll understand that we wanted to talk to Dad." "All right, I'll be there in an hour," Jason replied. He had nothing to do at the hotel, so he agreed to spend time with the kids. Emily had time to tell her mother, and she and Michael went to Susan's house. Jason didn't lie, he came. It was awkward for him, but he managed with his agility, and they all sat down to drink tea from the samovar and play bingo. And after a while, Emily called Daddy to talk to her. "Dad, I've got a rather complicated conversation to have with you about your Amber. I broke up with her today. She kicked me out of her apartment, said she didn't love me," Jason replied. "I know how. I didn't turn on the recording on my phone. Yeah, I promise you. You leave my Michael, and I'm leaving your father. I don't love him. I only needed him to accomplish my goal," Amber said on the recording. "Dad, Amber didn't love you at all. She only seduced you to get Michael away from me. She dated him before, but Michael dumped her when he met me. And I just found out all of this recently. You fell for her and hurt your mom," Emily said. Jason didn't say anything, but he didn't have much to say. In his defense, Michael had faked our breakup and told her that he was ready to go out with her again. "She dumped you that same day, Dad." "She's nothing," Emily finished and left the room. Jason remained standing alone in the room in silence. The next day evening, Emily walked Michael to work outside the airport. They met up with Amber. Emily purposely hugged Michael, kissing him. He reciprocated by kissing her too. Amber walked by them just then, and Emily had time to say, "You're too excited, sweetheart. You'll never see my Michael. He's mine and mine alone. You're a liar, Michael." Only now she realized that she had been tricked. "You're not all about screwing around with men. You stole my father away from my family, so you're left with nothing," Emily added. She was glad that Amber was finally getting what she deserved. And she deserved to be left alone. Michael and Emily got married a few months later and went on their honeymoon in Los Angeles. Emily had long dreamed of visiting that city. After the honeymoon, they sold their 2 apartments and bought a large 2-story house. And a year later, they had a son who was named James. Emily was on maternity leave, and Michael continued to work as an airplane captain. Susan, mother-in-law, not immediately, but accepted her daughter-in-law into her family because she had no choice. Emily healed Susan's knee, for which she was also very grateful. It took Susan a while, but she forgave Jason, who had apologized to her 1,000 times and asked for permission to return to their family nest. Susan accepted him back and tried not to remember everything that had happened between him and his mistress, Amber. In fact, Amber's name was avoided in this family. Too much emotion had been stirred up by it so far. Anthony, Emily's younger brother, graduated from high school and entered the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Amber quit her job at the airline where she and Michael worked together and left town for good. Their mutual acquaintances talked about Amber meeting her love and getting married too. But most importantly, she no longer bothered Emily, Michael, or Jason and Susan with her presence. Arriving at his ex-wife's house a year after the divorce, her husband froze upon learning of her fate. Amanda ran to the kitchen sink and splashed the coffee she had just drunk from a cup. "Catherine is messing with me again," the woman thought with anger and despair. "Stop hitting her with a belt," Amanda said out loud. She had woken up this morning in a good mood for once. It was Saturday, the whole weekend was ahead of her. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering lazily where the sun bunny had come from. She didn't immediately realize that it was a mirror lying on her bedside table, on which the rays were falling. How quiet is the house? Amanda wondered. It was 10 o'clock. John and Catherine should have been up by now. She planned to go to the mall and buy herself the pants she'd been eyeing on the store's website for a while, and pick up some clothes for her stepdaughter. Afterward, she and her husband could spend the day together. Amanda turned on her side and saw a note from her husband gone on business. Urgently summoned. But John won't know when he'll be back, she thought. Why does he have to be the one to be pulled on weekends? If the boss himself had traveled like this, he would not have sent others. Her husband was the deputy head of a large construction firm. He often personally traveled to the sites, including on weekends. This dampened Amanda's mood a little, but she tried not to give in to sadness. The woman threw a robe over her nightgown and went down to the first floor. In the kitchen, she boiled water in an electric kettle, poured ground coffee into a cup, and poured boiling water over it. John wouldn't fail to remind me that there's a coffee machine in the house, Amanda smiled. But it was nice to be able to make coffee the old-fashioned way, like when I was a student. She covered the cup with a saucer and went to the bathroom to wash up. Amanda decided to take a shower and stood under the cool jets for about 10 minutes. Then she returned to the kitchen, looked out the window and smiled at the sunny summer day that promised only good things. But it was a sip of coffee that ruined everything. Apparently, while I was in the bathroom, Catherine came into the kitchen and put something in the drink. Amanda pondered. What kind of nasty stuff did she find? Was it black pepper or Brooklyn? She had no desire to taste the liquid a second time. She emptied the cup into the sink and sighed. Her mood was hopelessly ruined. For the 6 years that Amanda had lived with John, she had tried to find common ground with Catherine, his daughter from her first marriage, but she had failed. And it all started with their very first meeting, when a man brought his then not yet wife, but the woman he loved, to introduce his 9-year-old daughter. "I had one mom, and I do not need a new one," said the girl, turned around and went into the room. "Will she get used to it?" John then divorced his hands. "It's been 3 years since Mary died. She misses her. You know," Amanda said. "A child is attached to her mother, and I'm not her aunt yet." "That's all right," her husband replied. But it didn't happen. When the woman offered to go with the girl to the children's park to spend time together and get acquainted, she seemed happy at first, but then throughout the walk was terribly cranky. "I'm dizzy. I feel sick. I don't want to feed them, and I don't want to eat myself. I don't want ice cream either." She refused even her favorite treat. John and Amanda were a little confused by her behavior, so they came home and tried to have dinner together. "My stomach hurts," Catherine said, and retreated to her room. So it went on. The girl perceived the new woman of the father exclusively in the bayonet. The man, on the contrary, only dreamed of meeting a new love after several years of lonely life after the death of his wife. "So smart and beautiful," he said of Amanda. And they met in a public restroom at the train station. "It's a shame to tell this story," the woman laughed later, recalling the situation. But she was not laughing then. In February, she came from her district center to the big city, where she found a job. The bus ride took her only 2 hours, so there were no sanitary stops. By the end of the trip, Amanda had a terrible urge to go to the bathroom. She jumped out of the vehicle and almost ran to the bus station building, but ran into a closed bathroom door. The restroom was closed for repairs, the note on it said. The nearest one was in the train station building. "What the hell is this?" the woman exclaimed in frustration. But there was no way out, and she hurried toward the train station, which was nearby. To get there, she had to pass through a small square, then go down into an underground passage, where people in a hurry were also pushing and literally stepping on each other's heels. God, couldn't the stations be connected somehow? Many people change from train to bus and vice versa, she muttered to herself. She was sweating in her down jacket from the fast walk. Strands of her brown hair were poking out from under her hat, and the suitcase she was dragging behind her looked like it was going to tear her arm off. Already barely tolerable, Amanda walked into the building and saw the huge lines. The women's restroom. And it's in a train station. However, the toilet is working. One of the people standing there was indignant. There were no people in front of the men's. Amanda, disregarding propriety, opened the door, saw a vacant stall, and ran in without thinking. The woman slammed the door shut behind her with a jerk and finally went to the bathroom. "Ooshish," she sighed in relief and smiled. That incredible feeling of relief. And then she saw that she hadn't closed the latch on the stall door. But it didn't matter, because luckily no one was trying to get in from the other side. The woman pushed the handle and pushed the door open to get out. But it wouldn't open. The handle didn't go all the way down. Amanda jerked on it some more, but to no avail. "What kind of bad luck is this?" she said aloud. "Madam?" came a voice from the next stall. A little surprised to hear that woman's voice. "But do you need help?" Very much, Amanda ventured, embarrassed. "I think the lock's jammed. The knob won't budge." Just a second, she heard the sound of water running from the stall. "Okay, now my hands are blistered. I'll think of a way to get you out." Amanda heard the sound of water running from the faucet, then the sound of a zipper being stretched, and then some rustling. "Found it," the man said cheerfully. He started picking something in the lock, and after a minute he swung the door open. And here I am, saving the princess imprisoned in the tower, he joked, holding a screwdriver. Yeah, Amanda smiled. A good princess upset with the press in front of the toilet. You're a fine lady. The man winked at her, and she admired his brown eyes. Dark-haired, handsome man. Thank you, seriously, the woman said as she left the stall. And I'm sorry to barge into the men's room, but I'll tell you the whole epic with the search for the restroom. Can we go out of here? The man suggested, and continue our acquaintance over a cup of tea. My treat. I agree, Amanda said. Where can I get something to eat here? I don't know the city. Let's go to a pancake house right here at the station, the man suggested. My name is John, by the way. Amanda, the woman replied. I agree. The pancake house is good. Let's go before the next leg of the road. They went to the far end of the building, where a sign with the image of appetizing pancakes hung. Once inside, they placed their order. Amanda chose cheese pancakes, and John chose chicken pancakes, plus 2 cups of black tea. We sat down at a table while we waited. Where are you from? The man started the conversation. On business or visiting? Is this your first time here? No, not for the first time. I've already come once for an interview. I'm from the district center. We don't have much work there. I found a vacancy here. I got hired, and I'm moving. Brevity is the sister of talent, John smiled. In a few sentences, they informed me of the events of the past few weeks. And what do you do? The woman asked. Where did you get a screwdriver all of a sudden? I work in a construction company. Constantly on the road, inspects objects. I accidentally picked up a screwdriver at the construction site after checking the fasteners. I found it on the train, called my colleagues and told them that I would bring it back the next time I visited them. It was a lucky coincidence for me, Amanda said. I don't know how long I would have had to sit there if it hadn't been for you. Oh, our order is ready. John got up and went and got it. Voila. He put the tray on the table. I'll pay for it. I insist, the woman said. You have a lot of money you need for rent. You'll need it now. Keep it, and I won't have to rent a hostel. That's why I got this job. It pays well and I have a place to live. After all, a hostel is cheaper than an apartment. I see, the man replied. But still, I'm not used to paying for women. So I insist on treating you. All right, Amanda accepted. Where do you live? I'm in the suburbs. I own my own house, built it a few years ago for my family. The woman blushed a little because she was starting to like this man. Are you married? Not anymore? No, he answered with restraint. My wife died, a transient cancer. My daughter is left behind. It's just the 2 of us. I'm sorry. My condolences, Amanda said sympathetically. How old is your daughter? She'll be 9 soon. She's my pride and joy. She's a good student. She plays sports. What kind of sports? I just got a job. State Athletics Training Center. She does skiing, plans to participate in races, but so far she's only enrolled in a sports school. Enrollment starts at age 9, but the coach was cooperative. Her daughter is a little younger, but they say she has abilities. Are you an athlete? What kind of sport do you do? I'm not. I take care of the athlete's health. I'm a nurse. Oh, how interesting. It's a bit of a catch-22, if you'll pardon the expression. I've been getting some injections lately. Don't think I'm sick. I just banged my elbow on a door jamb. Now it's a nerve problem. I can't feel my fingers. There's this nasty feeling that the whole nerve from elbow to hand is like a taut rope. Yeah, it's a minor injury. But it's a nasty one, Amanda agreed. Well, I do not want to go to the clinic for injections only to lose time in lines. So I was thinking of hiring a visiting nurse when I get back from my business trip. Maybe you'd be willing to help me out. Oh, I'd love a part-time job. But how would you get to the suburbs? There's a shuttle bus. If it's convenient for you, I'd rather invite you to our company's office. It's downtown. I'm just working all the time. My daughter is looked after by a governess and my mother-in-law. And me, staying late and at night, it would hardly be convenient for you to come to our house. It's a deal, Amanda said. I'll just check my schedule at the new place and contact you to discuss a convenient time. And for that we need to exchange phone numbers, the man smiled. Write mine down. That's how they began to communicate. And for 10 days, which lasted a course of prescribed injections, they became close. This was undoubtedly due to the daily contemplation of my naked heel, John joked. Yes, I appreciated your confidence, Amanda agreed. They began seeing each other on John's rare days off. His daughter Catherine was very unhappy with Amanda's appearance. Daddy, let's go out. I miss you so much. Why are you leaving home for that woman? The girl asked unhappily. Don't you love me anymore? Of course I do. I just want to take a little break from work and family matters and spend time with someone I like, the man said as affectionately as possible. You'll like her, you'll see. However, the girl took her father's new friend in stride. John and Amanda did not give up hope that the girl will eventually change her mind. But that didn't happen. After the first meeting and a trip to the park, they tried to go to the movies together, but Catherine again only frowned, showing that she was not interested in everything that was happening. You know what I suggest? John suddenly suggested to Amanda the next day. I think if we all live under the same roof, Catherine will realize that we're serious, and she'll soften up on you. I don't think it's time yet, Amanda shrugged. Maybe we should wait. Why wait until we're old? I want to live a full life with my family now, not put everything off for the future, the man insisted. The woman agreed, even though it seemed like a bad idea to her still only a few months after meeting him. She gave up her dorm room and moved in with John. Catherine took this fact with unexpected calm. A week later, Amanda realized why. Honey, my childhood friend Charlie is coming to visit us on Sunday, John said on Friday. He lives in another city and wants to show his fiancée his native New York. But he wants to meet my fiancée too. He hugged the woman and kissed her. And I'm already in bride status, Amanda smiled as she returned the kiss and also hugged the man. Of course I'm an honest man and I always marry the ones I love, John jokingly assured her. If that can be considered a proposal, then I'm in, Amanda said. That's just in case, the man said affectionately. We'll talk about it later. On Sunday, Amanda woke up early. She set the alarm clock for 8 because it was going to be an active day. She had to feed the guests breakfast after the road, then walk around the city, show the sights to Charlie's fiancée, and in the evening have dinner at a restaurant. Amanda really wanted to make a good impression on the people close to John. Now we'll have a quick coffee, she thought as she looked at the sleeping John. Then I'll do breakfast, and closer to their arrival I'll do my makeup and hair. With those thoughts, she stood up and reached for her glasses, which were on the nightstand. The woman had poor eyesight, so she wore contact lenses for work and other occasions when she left the house. At home, she wore glasses. Now Amanda was running her hand over the surface of the nightstand, trying to find the glasses, but it was as if they weren't there. That's odd, the woman thought. Maybe John moved them. But why? And I don't want to wake him up. She got up, bent over to the nightstand, trying to see what was on it. Then squatted down and ran her hands across the floor, deciding that the glasses might have fallen there. Amanda then looked for them everywhere: on the nightstand at John's side, on the dressing table where her makeup was, and on the windowsill. But the glasses were nowhere to be found. God, I threw away my contact lenses yesterday, remembered the woman. How am I going to get ready for the guests? John was supposed to buy the lenses. Later in the morning, he was going to meet the guests at the train station and could stop at the optician's on the way. For now, without lenses or glasses, Amanda was effectively paralyzed. She couldn't cook, she couldn't clean the house. The feeling of helplessness made her cry. What happened? John woke up. Upon hearing what had happened, he said he would go get the lenses right away. John, at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, where's the optician open? Amanda sighed. I'll find out which store opens first, the man said soothingly. In the meantime, you try to relax. Amanda went back to bed, since she couldn't do anything anyway. John picked up his phone, went online, looked for the nearest optician open from 9 o'clock, and started to get ready to go. Let's listen to some music, he said, handing Amanda a small player. It helps me on business trips when I get tired of looking at my phone on the train. Amanda put on the headphones, turned on the player, and closed her eyes. John was right, the tunes distracted her, and it didn't seem so bad that she wouldn't have time to do her hair as she'd planned. The most important thing for her was to feed her guests. I'll have to do without baking. I won't have time, she realized, and began to rethink the menu. Half an hour later, John returned. Amanda put on her lenses and finally went to wash her face and then to the kitchen. To her surprise, there on the windowsill were her glasses. John, how did they get here? She asked in amazement to the man who had entered next. Did you leave them here? He laughed. You've ruined your own mood this morning. I'm sure I didn't put them here. Why would you? How would I have gotten to the bedroom without them? Well, maybe you're tired. Took them off, left them on. The man shrugged. But Amanda was sure she couldn't have done such a thing. She had a bad suspicion in her head that she decided not to voice for the time being. In a couple of hours, the guests were to arrive, and she didn't want to meet them with a scandal and without food, so she started cooking. The rest of the day went according to plan. John's friend and his fiancée arrived. Everyone liked each other and had a good time. Even Catherine, who had been taken for a walk around the city, seemed to be in a good mood. Maybe I'm imagining things for myself, thought Amanda, observing the girl's behavior. But after a few more days, she became convinced of what she already suspected. The child began to constantly do small nasty things to her, then hide something, then in the yogurt spilled cereal, then throws shoes. Amanda just kept quietly tidying up. After one of the first incidents, she tried to inform John about his daughter's antics, but the response was not what she had hoped for. John, do you really believe I would do such a thing? For some reason, Amanda led the man into the living room where her underwear was strewn across the couch and chairs. Why would Catherine do such a thing? He said indignantly. Because she doesn't like me. This isn't the first time she's done something like this. Remember the stories about the glasses? I don't know why you're snapping at her. It can all be explained by your forgetfulness. I forgot that I left my underwear all over the room, but you what? Let's drop the subject, the man said irritably. I love both you and my daughter, so try not to swear. Nice touch, washed his hands of it, Amanda thought resentfully. Okay, I'm not going to take revenge on the child, I'll be patient. It went on like that for about a year, until the family moved into a new big house. John insisted. I want to see a new family nest in a new place, he told Amanda. I was living with a different family in the old house after all. It's time for us to start our own. You and I have been putting off getting married. But I think we should get married, and the house is officially in your name. You're a little emotional when you talk about such important steps, aren't you? The woman was a little surprised. Perhaps I'm afraid to jinx my happiness, the man smiled. It hurts when you enjoy life, and it is like envy to you as a footstool. Like my first wife died, Catherine had just grown up. I got the job I have now, and everything was going so well. And then it all fell apart. We'll be fine, Amanda said softly. They chose a house together. Catherine was excited about the move. I'll have a big room, the girl rejoiced. Yes, your current one in our old house will seem like a cubbyhole compared to it, John replied. Let's go with your taste. Amanda decided to improve the opportune moment, as long as the girl was in a good mood. Let's you be the one to choose our common house. Look where you like best, what room, what yard, and so on. Okay, Catherine agreed cheerfully. John silently took Amanda's hand and discreetly stroked her fingers in appreciation. They found the house quickly enough. The two-story building was located in a quiet neighborhood. There was a small courtyard in front of the front door, and a large area at the back of the building where they could plant flower beds or vegetables. Trees were already growing their fruit: apples, pears, ornamental, and birch trees. The whole family literally fell in love with this place, and the deal to buy it was done. A couple weeks later, they moved in and immediately put their old place on the market. We'll use the money to go on a honeymoon, John said that evening at the first dinner in the new house. And we're going to furnish the place to our liking. And we'll buy you a car, finally. Thank you. I'm very happy right now, Amanda replied. And I'm grateful that you've changed my life. You changed mine, the man looked at her tenderly. Catherine, who was watching the scene, wrinkled her nose but said nothing. 6 months later, the couple played a wedding. There were few guests: John's father, his mother was dead, Amanda's parents, and a few of their closest friends. An unexpected guest was the man's former mother-in-law. He kept good relations with Anna Vitalievna and even decided to invite her to his new marriage. God grant you a long life together, she sincerely wished him, raising her glass. Amanda looked at her gratefully, happy that this woman who had lost her daughter had found the strength to accept the new woman who was taking care of her granddaughter. She didn't know then what her ex-mother-in-law's love for her child, the only family she had left, would mean. I'm not wearing that. Catherine threw her summer dress in Amanda's direction. They'll make fun of me at school. Years passed. Catherine turned 15 and adolescence was in full force. By this time, she had won many competitions in cross-country skiing, received a sports category, and was enrolled in the School of Olympic Reserve. The school year was about to begin, and Amanda offered encouragement to update her closet. It was on the day Amanda was going to take her shopping that Catherine ruined her stepmother's morning coffee. I'm an athlete, not a party girl, irritatedly said the girl now, running from one outlet to another. But you're a girl. You have to look like one, Amanda answered her calmly. You can't always wear tracksuits. But I do play sports, Catherine countered. But not all of you. You have to wear something to class, to lectures. I'll see what other people wear, then I'll decide. But thank you for your concern. Catherine finished the conversation. Amanda sighed and followed the stubborn girl to the sportswear store. Buy new tracksuits, it was impossible to understand her stepdaughter. Sometimes she seemed to be good to her stepmother, and sometimes Amanda found that she continued to sneak around. It usually happened after some sort of spat. I wonder what she'll come up with tomorrow, the woman thought curiously, waiting for the girl from the fitting room. Will she put something in my coffee again? Will he delete my files in my laptop or throw out something worse? But surprisingly, there were no consequences. Despite the disagreement at the store, the girl hadn't gotten back at her stepmother in any way. Amanda had really hoped that the simmering conflict would die down on its own when Catherine entered college and moved into the dormitory. But John insisted that his daughter stay at home. I know what goes on in these dormitories, he said. I don't want you wasting your time hanging out instead of studying." At that moment, Catherine and Amanda finally shared something in common: disappointed facial expressions. Both had hoped to see each other less often. "Oh well, I'll wait for her to get married," Amanda thought with bitter irony. The everyday life dragged on. Everything went on as usual. John often went on business trips. Amanda worked as a nurse. Catherine was at college until late in the evening. A phone call interrupted the routine, and in December, disaster struck. "We can't find your husband," Amanda got a call from the college that afternoon. "Your little girl has been seriously injured. She's in the emergency room." Amanda didn't remember taking off work and calling a cab. Despite everything, she loved this girl, even though she didn't reciprocate. She ran to the emergency room and learned that Catherine had a displaced tibia fracture and was being prepped for emergency surgery. "Do you need parental consent?" the woman asked the young doctor who admitted Catherine. "Her father is now in another city, and I did not adopt her. Can I give permission?" "It's okay," the doctor replied. "At 15, she can consent to surgery on her own." "Okay," Amanda said, confused. "So it's bad. What's the prognosis?" "I'm not an attending physician. I just examined her and referred her for surgery," the man replied. "Talk to a specialist later. All I can say is that this type of fracture is complex, and rehabilitation after it is very long. But she will not be disabled. She's an athlete." "Let's hope not," shrugged the doctor. "Understand, everything will be clear at the operation. Depends on how well the specialist will be able to assemble the bone. I really can neither scare nor reassure you." "It's fine now." "I'm sorry," Amanda said. "Wait until the surgery is over. The doctors will come out and tell you everything at once." The woman went to wait in the lobby of the clinic. She tried to call John, but he didn't pick up. Maybe he's in negotiations, Amanda thought, even though it had been hours already, and no one still couldn't reach him. How worried is he going to be, poor guy? I guess I can't understand these parental feelings. After all, it's not like I don't have kids. Her thoughts jumped to the unpleasant history of their attempts to have a child. Amanda and John had thought about it a couple of years ago, when their life together had settled down. They were in their early 30s, and the chances of having a baby were quite high. However, Amanda was not able to get pregnant. They had undergone numerous tests that showed the couple to be perfectly healthy. "There are such cases," explained the fertility doctor. "There may be something going on due to nervous tension, and the body doesn't want to get pregnant in a stressful situation of the stressors." Amanda could only remember her relationship with her stepdaughter. Otherwise, she and John had a calm, measured life without upheaval. And it appeared that, ironically, she was unable to have a child because of the presence of another child in her life. Her nervous thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. It was John. "Oh my God," he said, horrified to hear what had happened. "I'm on my way. I'll be there tomorrow. Take care of everything, please." The girl was operated on immediately. The doctor came out to Amanda and said he was satisfied with the result. Catherine was coming out of anesthesia, and the woman was told that she could visit her tomorrow. Amanda went home. "It's unaccustomedly quiet here," she thought as she entered the house. Amanda went to the bedroom, and from her worry she powerlessly sank down on the bed and fell asleep. It was as if everything went well from there. Catherine was discharged, being warned that she would have a cast for at least 2 months. The girl was very upset because she missed classes and was basically very limited in movement. She sat at home, read a lot, and watched movies. "You look so downcast," Amanda said, looking at her daughter. "What do you want?" "She's very worried about not being able to play her favorite sport," John replied. "It's hard for her at her age to put up with so much. It's all about getting it right," John sighed. "I'm sure she'll catch up with her classmates." But Catherine was not so lucky. When it came to the point to remove the cast and begin the long rehabilitation process, It turned out that the bones are not properly healed, and there were symptoms of osteoporosis. The bone had become less dense and less strong, the doctor explained to John and Amanda. This can lead to new fractures, even from minor stresses. "What should we do?" John asked. His voice trembled. "Treat it. First, we have another operation as soon as possible, and then take special drugs to stimulate bone formation. The endocrinologist prescribes them." "That's good. Who do you recommend?" clarified the worried father. "I would recommend treatment abroad. There are good clinics in Germany, but it will be expensive, you understand." "We'll find the money," John replied calmly. They drove home depressed in Amanda's car. The woman was driving. John and Catherine sat in the back. The girl pressed herself against her father and cried quietly, realizing that it will not soon be able to take up skiing and generally return to the usual way of life. "I'll have to leave the school," finally raised her voice Catherine. "Let's not be in a hurry," John said soothingly and held his daughter to himself. "Take a sabbatical for a year." Amanda was silent the whole way there and back. The woman sympathized with Catherine, but she had some very important news of her own that she didn't want to tell her family yet. What good fortune. What bad timing, Amanda thought in the bathroom this morning when she saw the 2 long-awaited stripes on the pregnancy test. No, the good news will have to wait after all. I have to deal with Catherine first. The woman decided and put the test back in the package, and then hid it in the pocket of her robe. And now, on her way home, she tried her best to hide her joy at finally becoming a mother. No matter how hard she tried to shift her focus to her stepdaughter's health, Amanda couldn't escape the thoughts of her future child. Boy or girl, she pondered. And how will they get along with Catherine? Won't she be jealous if she starts doing nasty things like she did to me? This is where Amanda started to get worried. And that's when she intercepted her stepdaughter's tense gaze in the rearview mirror. Amanda flinched. She was staring at her with unconcealed anger. The woman averted her eyes and gripped the steering wheel. She felt very scared. She had a premonition of something very bad. "I found a suitable clinic for Catherine in Germany," John said a few days later. "Now I will collect the money. The amount, of course, astronomical, more than 1,000,000 rubles. And this is only for the operation. And also rehabilitation." "What's all this money for?" Amanda was horrified. "It includes not only surgery, but also tests, a consultation with an orthopedic traumatologist before the operation, and examination after the surgery. 3 days in the hospital, 6 days in a hotel. And transportation, pick up from the airport, take to the hospital, and then to the hotel." I see, the woman sighed. "At least afterward, when Catherine comes home, I'll be able to take care of her myself. I'm a nurse, so at least we'll save a little money." "Why don't you want money from me?" Catherine suddenly said rudely. "There's plenty to spend it on." Amanda was taken aback. "I just wanted to know what the money would be used for. So it's all inclusive, except for the food. That means there's money for that too." "You're right," said John. "I plan to borrow the whole amount from the director of my company and pay off part of her salary." John served the whole amount and made an appointment. The director agreed to give the money in a large advance, and John received it a few days later. "I've never seen so much money," Amanda said as they spread the bills out on their bed to do an exact count. "It should be enough for everything, both surgery and rehab." "But I'll give you more if you need it," John said. "Children are sacred." "How do I tell him I'm pregnant?" Amanda thought after he said that. Maybe I should wait until Catherine's surgery and then tell him the good news. They put the money in the nightstand in the bedroom and went to bed. In the morning, everyone went to work, leaving Catherine to pack. For the hospitalization, her grandmother Anne came over to help. All day Amanda was distracted. She barely worked her shift. Tired, she got in her car and drove home. The next day she felt worse, dizzy and nauseous. Could it be toxemia? Amanda thought. It's a little early. Maybe it's the age thing. I wouldn't drive today in case she felt sick, so I'd call a cab. At work, she felt bad. She excused herself and went to see a gynecologist. Her eyes were blurry. Could Catherine have poisoned me with something? She had a terrible thought. No, she's not capable of serious harm. She can't do a little mischief, but she can't poison me. The doctor advised Amanda to drink plenty of water, to include fermented milk products and porridge in her diet, and prescribed magnesium and vitamin B6 supplements. Amanda drove home, wishing she could go to bed sooner. She felt weak and drowsy, but a nightmare awaited her at home. The money's gone. She was startled to see John at her doorstep. How? Catherine was home, and her grandmother Anne, who could have gotten in. They say they left to buy Catherine a backpack for the road. The old one was all worn out. But who could have known we had that kind of money at home? Only ours. Your principal. Amanda was thinking out loud. I'm shocked, to be honest, John admitted. We have to leave tomorrow. Everything's been arranged, and we don't have the money. Amanda went up to the second floor, went into the bedroom, and sat down on the bed at a loss. Her head was simply splitting. Her brain refused to recognize the reality of what was happening. She stared blankly at the nightstand where the money had been lying in the morning and didn't know how to comfort her husband. We found the money. She suddenly heard Anne's voice from downstairs. Amanda struggled to get up and walk downstairs. She was glad that the situation was resolved and wanted to know what had happened. She walked into the living room, and Anne said caustically, "Shame on you, thief." "What are you talking about?" Amanda asked, puzzled. "How could you steal money from a sick child?" Anne turned to her. "It's a good thing I thought to look in your car." "And we found the whole amount there," added Catherine, who was sitting next to her grandmother on the couch. John looked at his wife in silence with contempt. She did not know what to say, so absurd were these accusations. "She hid them in the trunk under a bag with some tools," said Anne. "I didn't expect that. You've lived together for so many years, and you?" "Why did you skip work today?" Catherine added. "We're thinking where to hide the money? Were you looking for a safety deposit box? Or did you want to give it to your lover, but you didn't have time to take it out?" "What is this nonsense?" Amanda finally found her voice. "And how do you know I wasn't at work? I called you to see if you had an extra backpack. I had a doctor's appointment. You could have called my cell phone." "Why would you call my cell phone at work?" Catherine said. "I don't understand what you're thinking about money. You didn't plan any of this?" "That wasn't the plan." Anne interrupted her. "Maybe you planted it on me," suddenly realizing, turned to Catherine. "Amanda, nice setup. Very skillfully thought out this time. Slipping money into my car. It's not like putting pepper in my coffee. You're an asshole, not a human being." The woman suddenly burst into tears. "All these years we've been living, and you're ruining my life." So John roared, "Shut up," and he turned on his wife. "How dare you yell at my child, and a sick one at that? And how dare she accuse your wife of incomprehensible things?" Amanda parried. "Do you have some kind of double standard?" "Fuck you," suddenly bellowed her husband. "You can't touch my daughter, you infertile fool. I have you for her. Wanted to ruin her life. Disrupt the operation urgently. Are you out of your mind?" "I would never in my life have started," was Amanda, but no one was listening to her. "Get out," yelled John. "I don't want to see you. I'll file for divorce as soon as I get back from Germany. And I'll be damned if I leave you any property." 2 months later, Amanda sat in her dorm room and calculated how much money she had left before her paycheck. The amount was not encouraging. She had to keep buying vitamin supplements. Pregnancy was harder on her than expected. "And I don't have any savings," Amanda pondered. "And nothing to sell. John took everything from me. He signed the house over to himself in the divorce with his lefty lawyers and the car, and even the gifts he gave me. Over the years, all my inexpensive jewelry. Only her parents knew about her pregnancy. She didn't have time to tell John at first, and afterward she didn't want to. She was too hurt by the way her ex-husband had treated her. Maybe you should tell him, after all," Margaret's mother exhorted the woman. "I don't want to." The daughter shook her head negatively. "My child doesn't need a father who threw his mother out on the street after 6 years of living together without much of a trial. Take my grandmother on Dad's side of the family. She split up with her husband because of him, too. He cheated on her. So she went to her house in a remote village and did not let him on the doorstep when he came to repent. And after that he lived as a hermit. So she took offense at the whole world." "I remember that story, Mom. I only visited her a couple of times when I was a child, and after that she refused to accept everyone and got into herbs. She treated the locals, but for some reason she didn't want to know her family. Strange, isn't it? And her house is still intact. But no one goes there. When they buried her, they forgot the road. It's probably overgrown. But I'm not going to be a hermit," Amanda smiled. "I have no grudges against the whole world, just one person." It was time for the first ultrasound. A few months ago, Amanda never imagined that she would have to go in for a checkup alone, without her loving husband, on such an important day. Her mom was back in town. She couldn't stay with her daughter. Amanda's father had had a stroke and the man needed to be cared for. "So the baby is fine," the doctor who performed the ultrasound told Amanda. "Do you want to know who it's going to be?" "Yes." Amanda opened her eyes in anticipation and smiled contentedly when she heard the answer. It had been a year. John had been working on his daughter's rehabilitation the whole time. The operation in Germany was successful, but the cast was not removed for a long time, and it took a long time to develop the leg after all this. However, despite all efforts, Mary limped, and her character from this did not improve at all. "Why did fate do this to me?" said the girl irritably to her father. "I wanted to devote my life to sports. And what in the end? What am I to do now? To live and recover in time is how long has it been? Do you believe I'll miraculously heal and start skiing again?" "Look, but you can be more than just an athlete or a coach. There are different training programs, including for people with disabilities." "What do you think I am? Handicapped?" Catherine exclaimed with tears of anger in her eyes. "No, that's not what I meant to say." John tried to calm his daughter. But she did not listen and went to her room. These conversations were happening more and more often, and they were devastating to the man. "I was always on her side," he thought bitterly. "So many years did not marry, took care of her feelings. Kicked the traitor Amanda out when I found out she was dirty. Now I live alone. Why doesn't she appreciate that?" The young man was totally dependent on his daughter's whims. He reluctantly went home from work, because there he was waiting for a frowning-faced Catherine in her eternal dissatisfaction with complaints. He began to spend even more time on business trips, and in one of them met a nice woman, Amber. She worked as a waitress at the restaurant where he and his partners went for dinner. "Where do you always go at night?" After a month, my daughter suspected something was wrong. "I go out with my friends. Not all I have to babysit you." John cut him off. In fact, he did not want to tell his daughter about his personal life, remembering her attitude to Amanda. The man offered Amber to move to his town, rented her an apartment the income allowed, and visited her several times a week. Amber accepted the status of secret lover. "I don't care," she told her friend in a telephone conversation. Like a cheese and butter, I roll around. I don't have to work. I make eyes at him. I chase his legs, and he, sweetheart, is ready for anything. She laughed. You're lucky, she sighed enviously. I would have to find someone to provide me with everything. Maybe we'll get married. Amber continued to brag. I've been hinting at him, working him up, but he's afraid to introduce me to his daughter. According to his story, she's a very spoiled, capricious girl. But good luck to you, wished her friend. At least call me to the wedding. I'm sure you'll get what you want. But the plans of calculating Amber was not destined to materialize. However, it was only her own fault she missed socializing. Sitting alone in her apartment 24 hours a day, she got herself a lover 20-year-old Michael from the neighboring entrance, who was constantly looking at the poor woman, who went shopping at the grocery store in a provocative short dress and stilettos. One day she lured him with her finger into the entryway, and he obediently followed her. You are my goddess, whispered the enchanted young man, lying in bed after his lovemaking. His admiration pleased her ego but let her guard down. One day she was kissing a young lover in the street near her driveway and didn't notice John pulling up in his car. He got out of the car and stood silently watching Amber and Michael embrace. Young man, he finally said snidely, let me help you pack up your beauty's things and take them outside. She's moving in with you now, I suppose. Amber and Michael looked away from each other, stunned. The woman realized it was pointless to make excuses in such a situation and, sighing, went to her entryway to say goodbye to her apartment and to pack up her belongings. What a fool, she thought frustratedly. Now to return home with nothing to eat. Emberochka, really move in with me, Michael said, catching up with her on the stairs. Are you stupid? She answered rudely, opening the apartment. Milk on your lips has not dried up, and you're already climbing up skirts? Get out. And slammed the door in his face. The confused guy with the eyes of a hurt kitten remained standing in the stairwell, but Amber didn't care about him anymore. God, who have I messed with? John pondered as he walked home. It's from loneliness, apparently not recognizing a woman of easy virtue, he began to feel very sorry for himself. It felt like he was paying the price. But by an effort of will, the man restrained himself. At home, he was waiting for the second part of the play, which could be called a comedy of situations. But it was not a comedy, but a tragedy. Catherine met her father with hysterics. I want to go to the sea, she declared, suddenly entering the living room, where the man sat down to rest from emotion. Catherine is tired of sitting at home and going to doctors. Daughter, it is necessary to heal. Something cranky. We'll go on vacation in a couple of months, I promise. Why not now? I'm tired. I want to swim. It's good for my leg. Let's go this week, she demanded of her father. Stop it, John shouted at her, his nerves finally giving out. First the mistress surprised him, then the daughter made demands. Why are you yelling at me? Why are you acting like a little kid? You're an adult, but you're only doing things. You're sassing me. What do you want? You don't like me. Maybe your new baby will be better. Is that what you're counting on? What baby, for God's sake? John waved her away. I'm not having any kids. If you found out about Amber somehow, don't worry, I broke up with her. Amber? Who the hell is Amber? I meant your Amanda. Did she have an abortion or something? I don't get it, John frowned. Why are you bringing her up? And what does that have to do with the abortion? But she should have been in labor by now. Didn't you even ask if you had a son or a daughter? She was pregnant when she left here. It finally came to John. I didn't know about it. How did you know? I found a 2-stripe pregnancy test in her robe. She obviously didn't put someone else's in there. Oh my God. So you really did go through her stuff all the time, just like she said. And I was a fool not to believe it. Yes, Catherine smirked. I got rid of her beautifully, didn't I? Our plan was a success. John silently looked at the monster, in which he could not recognize his daughter, and with horror waited for the continuation, although he was beginning to guess what she means. Grandma Ann helped me, the girl said. As soon as I found this test, I realized that you would soon abandon me. New wife, new offspring. Her tone became dismissive when it came to the baby. So I got my grandmother to help me plant money for my stepmother. I could barely walk on my own. How could you? John exhaled in shock. Grandmother broke quickly, boasted Catherine. She has no one but me. She was already worried about me. And then I frightened her that you'll start a new family. You'd dump me, an invalid, on her. So it's about money. It turns out, looked at Catherine father. In general, yes, she shamelessly confirmed. The man got up, left the living room and went to the second floor, not seeing the road. He came to his senses when he hit his toes on the banister, as if in a fog. Climbing the stairs, he went into his office, where there was a small bar, took out a bottle of cognac, a glass, sat down at his desk, and began to get methodically drunk. After a couple hours staggering, he went downstairs and hailed a cab. Get me Amanda, who recently moved in, he demanded of the janitor at the hostel where his wife had lived before their marriage. Amanda who? Go sleep it off, she scolded. I'll call the police. Nurse Amanda. She was supposed to move in here a year ago. I know exactly who you're talking about. She moved out before she gave birth. Bought herself a house. A house? John was surprised. Where did she get the money? You mean her ex-husband? The one who kicked her pregnant and penniless out of the house. She earned the money for the house. It was a very interesting story when she was 6 months pregnant. Amanda had lost her spirit. She went to work, returned to her dormitory in utter despondency. Didn't know where she was going to get the money to support her child. Her parents could not help. The father needed expensive medicines and physiotherapy. The woman didn't even think about returning to her hometown and creating additional expenses for her mother, for herself, and the child. Can't do this anymore, she thought, as Emily lay in her one room on an uncomfortably narrow bunk that made her back ache. I need a distraction, somewhere to get out so I don't spend a lot of money. And then the conversation with her mother about her reclusive grandmother popped into her head. Amanda was revitalized. It would be possible to go to that abandoned cottage, to walk away from the noisy city, to breathe the forest air. And in a few minutes she was on her way. The cabin was only 30 kilometers from the city. You could get to the nearest village by electric train, and then you had to walk a couple of kilometers through the forest. How overgrown is everything here, marveled the woman when she reached the place. And here my grandmother had medicinal herbs and a vegetable garden. She stepped inside the cabin. The shriveled door was unlocked. Inside was old furniture covered in dust. Amanda found a stool, laid a cellophane bag she had with her on it, and sat down to rest from the road. She was in a strange mood. How nice to go back to childhood for a little while, she thought. And how sad that I'm as lonely as my grandmother was. And then the woman's gaze fell on a puffy Soviet-era stationery book lying on a table nearby. She reached out, picked it up, and dust kicked up into the air. The recipes were written in the book in chemical pencil. I didn't know Grandma was into self-medication, Amanda marveled. She opened the book, and there were recipes for healing ointments and other remedies her grandmother had made. There were a good 100 of them, if not more. Leafing through the book, Amanda noticed a section called back pain. Interesting to try this, she thought. My back is hurting more and more every month. Late in the pregnancy, it's scary to think what will happen. I'll take this tome with me. At home, she prepared the ointment, having bought at the pharmacy those herbs that were in the recipe. and Vaseline as a base, tried to apply it to herself. And oh miracle! After 2 days, the pain in her back went away. The interested woman decided to try other recipes. Okay, let's try a hair mask. Amanda thought she was stressed because of her pregnancy and it caused a dull complexion. She decided to try the face mask because her skin looked terrible. The effect surprised not only her but also her co-workers. After a month, her skin was soft and her hair was smooth and shiny. Women at work flooded her with questions about what miracle remedy she was using. Amanda made them each a jar of her concoctions but didn't reveal the recipe. Word spread quickly, and soon she had a line of people lined up to receive the healing substances. We need to get someone to help, Amanda decided, and offered the job to the woman who lived closest to her. The same janitor who was now telling the story to John. I mostly just sit here, the older woman told the man. There's nothing to do at night, so I used to work part-time for your wife. And then she started selling goods through social media. It went well, and she moved into a small shop, opened it up and hired full-time help. John froze as he learned of his wife's fate. He had thought her a conniving liar until now, but it turned out that she was a capable businesswoman who started her own business without anyone's help. The child she gave birth, he inquired quietly. Yes, I can give you the address. You can talk to her yourself, the woman relented. Even though you have rattled her nerves. She was very fond of you at the time. John took the slip of paper with the address and thanked the woman profusely. Though he wanted to run to Amanda, he held back and went home, deciding he needed to get some sleep, sober up, and get himself back to normal. The next morning he showered, shaved, drank a few cups of coffee and drove his car to his ex-wife's house. The closer he got to her house, the more nervous he became. What will she say to me? How will she take it? He pondered. If I were her, I'd probably spit in her face. He drove up to the right house, hidden by a tall green fence, got out of the car and knocked on the gate. After a while it swung open. Amanda looked up at him with the baby in her arms. John stood silent, unable to find the right words. Come in, the woman said, moving aside and letting him pass. I just found out about everything. About the pregnancy, John pronounced, waiting for her to close the wicket. She looked at him carefully and nodded toward the open door. Come inside. I'll give you tea. I had no desire to inform you after everything that's happened, Amanda said calmly as she walked into the kitchen. Sit down, I'll put the kettle on now. And how is Catherine? Has she recovered? Not so good. 1 minute she's better, the next she's worse. Moody. Behavior is atrocious because of it. I'm not surprised, Amanda smiled, rocking the baby who flinched at the sound of the kettle boiling. She wasn't an angel in the good times either. But whatever she thought, I treated her well and worried about her health. And she did such an ungrateful thing. She confessed everything John said. Said it was her and Anne who set you up. What was the point of that? Why so jealous of me and the baby? Amanda sighed. And that's him. You said baby, so is it a boy? A boy, the woman blurted out in a smile as she looked at her son. We're 4 months old soon. What did you name him? John held out his hands and Amanda gently handed the baby to him. Stepan Jonovich. Sound good? Tears came to the man's eyes. Sweetheart, can you forgive me? I was not myself because of my daughter's illness. I snapped at you. I believed everything. You know, with the baby coming, I'd begun to understand you better, Amanda replied. I don't know how I would have coped if Stepashka had gotten sick. How would I have behaved? So you can forgive me, John repeated. The most important question for him right now. Amanda answered it. We'll see. 6 months later, they celebrated a birthday. The baby was a year old. There were few guests, only the closest ones. Amanda's parents came. Her father got better and was able to endure the road. Also present were John's father and Catherine and her grandmother. "I can't help but admire your kindness," John whispered to Amanda, taking a moment when they were alone in the kitchen preparing to bring out the desserts for the holiday table. "You've forgiven Catherine and her grandmother. I think they've realized what they've done and are truly remorseful." "What's the big deal? Holding a grudge for the rest of your life? Especially now. After all, it was lucky to have such a sister as Catherine became." John smiled. "Yes, she really cares for him. Who would have thought it? She's forgotten about sports. She wants to be a teacher." "God grant us all wishes," said Amanda. "I already have all my wishes," the man replied. "I have a real strong family. All my loved ones are with me every day." They hugged each other and looked into the living room, where at the same table were gathered people who had made mistakes and were eager to correct them, who were angry with despair but found the strength to overcome themselves and rejoice in the changes, who fought with illnesses but inspired others with their kindness, and of course, who knew how to forgive their loved ones. After all, family is the most important, the most valuable thing in our lives.